Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Became a Ghost Hero? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Izuku stood in front of the large doors to the practical exam. The doors had to have stood over 12 feet tall. It made Izuku even more nervous than he already was. Just that morning he had received one for all. The sacred torch that was passed through generations. And yet, he hadn't even used it yet. Around him were about 30 or 40 other examinees. All of them seemed to be either deep in their own anxieties or in conversation with others. He recognized a few, the girl who had helped stop him from falling earlier and the kid who interrupted Present Mic's speech. "All right, let's get this show on the road," shouted the familiar voice of Present Mic. Izuku took a deep breath, trying to force himself to be prepared for whatever UA was planning to throw at him. The doors opened and then dash. Nothing, no one dared to move. "What are y'all waiting for? There's no countdown in real life," Present Mic shouted, using his quirk. With that, they were off. Everyone made a mad dash for the door. Izuku seemed to wander around in all the chaos. The timer began to count down and Izuku was walking around like a headless chicken. They only had 5 minutes, so Izuku had to get himself together. However, every robot Izuku encountered seemed to be taking it out before Izuku could even begin to come up with a plan. He needed a plan. Then all of a sudden the ground began to shake. Everyone stood shocked as a large robot almost taller than the doors emerged from the ground. Everyone around him seemed to be running away from the robot, and Izuku was just about to do the same thing when he noticed the Zero-G girl from earlier trapped under rubble. She was right in the robot's path of destruction. Izuku had to act fast. He didn't have enough time to help get her out. So the best solution was to take out the robot himself. Izuku powered up One for All. The quirk stung underneath his skin and jumped forward. He raised his fist and in one punch knocked the robot down. All his limbs seemed to buzz with One for All screaming in pain. What was this pain? Was this what All Might felt? Then in a moment, the buzzing stopped. In fact, everything stopped. There were no more sounds or lights. He couldn't feel anything either. Izuku felt as if he seemed to be being pulled back. To where he didn't know. Breaking news. UA examinee killed during practical. UA examinee killed in a quirk accident. His body exploded, reported an eyewitness. Is quirk's singular theory finally catching up to US? Stupid Deku, I told you. I told you that would die in the exam. Izuku sat up in his bed. He felt oddly cold and lightweight. The first thing he noticed was the fact that he was wearing clothes he didn't own. He also had gone to bed with his shoes on for some reason. Cammy, that was a weird dream. He had met his idol All Might. He saved Kaken somehow? All Might decided to train him. He just happened to have a transferable quirk and had for some reason decided to give it to Izuku. A quirkless nobody. You can only dream that stuff. Izuku glanced towards his clock. 7. Ah, crackers. He was going to be late. Why hadn't his mother woken him up for school? Izuku ran out of his room. He had to go or he'd be late. If he was late he'd probably get detention again. He could probably go the whole day with an energy bar, right? Oh, shiitake mushrooms. He forgot to change into his. I don't dash. I don't know what to do without him. He heard a voice sob, his mother's voice. Izuku froze in shock. Who is she talking about? Oh, Inko will get you through this, okay? Mitsuki Bakugo told her in the kindest voice he had ever heard his aunt use. She didn't even use that voice when Kaken broke his arm when they were. How? Mom cried, her voice breaking. My baby is gone. What? He was right here, wasn't he? Izuku ran into the living room. Auntie was sitting on the couch, her eyes looked a little red. Mom sat next to her, her eyes red and puffy. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her eyes looked so haunted. I'm right here, Mom. Izuku cried. I am right here. I haven't gone anywhere. Look, I'm right here. Izuku, baby, he's dash. Mom's voice was shaking and broken. The way no mother's voice should be. She buried her face in Auntie's shoulder. Auntie rubbed her back. I know, Inko, I know, Auntie whispered. Tears began to fill her eyes too. He had never seen Auntie cry before. I'm right here. Izuku whispered to no one in particular. Izuku didn't know how to react. He was dead. His mother was in a broken state. He was dead. He had let All Might down and taken One for All with him. And he was dead. He was dead. He was actually dead. His mother had put up a shrine and everything. Not only that, but he had died 2 months ago. He had died 2 months ago. 2 months ago. The worst part of it all was his mother. She would wake up at odd times of the night and forget he was dead. She would call out for him only to remember what had happened. She broke down into sobs every day. Sobs that broke his heart. He could only watch and wait for Auntie to come like she always did around 2 p.m. Izuku couldn't take it. He just couldn't take it. He couldn't comfort his mother. He could only watch as she broke down sobbing over old photos. He could only watch as she wandered into his room and talked to him. She would talk to him for hours. He would respond, but she never heard him. In fact, when he did respond, she seemed to get more upset. So he couldn't even try to answer her. Mom stood in the kitchen looking blankly at what she was cooking. Every day she would make katsudon. It was Izuku's favorite, and Mom made it every day. Every day she would make it and cry as she ate it. Sometimes she wouldn't even eat it. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't think ONEFO or all would actually cause my limbs to blow off. I'm so sorry. Izuku told her, tears streaming down his face. He knew she couldn't hear him, but it didn't matter. Mom reached for a knife. What was she? Then it dawned on him. She raised a knife to her wrist. Mom, what are you dash? Mom, please stop. Izuku sobbed, you please stop. Mom, please stop. Please stop. Please stop. Please stop. But she didn't. She slit them. Tears in her eyes. An oddly calm smile on her face. It made Izuku want to throw up and cry. He had to do something, anything. He rushed into the living room to the landline phone. It was stupid to try, right? To call Andy? No, he had to save her. He picked up the phone. Izuku wasn't sure how, and dialed Auntie's number. Inko, are you alright? Andy. Auntie, please yo, you have to stop here. Please stoph. Please save her. He cried into the phone. Inko? Are you alright? I'm coming over there right now. Audie told him before hanging up the phone. It was going to be okay. She was going to be okay. After that, Mom went to a mental hospital for 2 weeks. That was all her insurance would cover. Izuku spent the 2 weeks in the apartment, unsure what to do. That's when he really started to notice things. For one, his shirt read, Ghost in Training. It almost felt like the universe was playing tricks on him. Maybe he would wake up soon from a coma? He also noticed that if he concentrated enough, he could pick up objects and flicker lights. He could talk, but he wasn't sure how much people heard, or if they could hear any of it. After her stay in the hospital, Mom moved in with the Bakugos. Izuku knew that he should have gone with her, but he couldn't look at her. Izuku had always seen her as the largest force. Someone so kind and selfless and warm. Yet she had almost killed herself. She was so lost in grief that she had tried to do something Izuku would have never thought she would do. He can't look at his mother without thinking about how he was the cause of all her suffering. It was all his fault. So Izuku left in search of All Might. He of course had a few questions, like what happened to One for All? How was his mentor doing? What was the plan if One for All died with him? How doomed was the world if One for All was in fact gone? Izuku made his way to Takoba Municipal Beach. In hindsight, it made no sense that All Might would even be there, but the author couldn't just have him go to the pro's house, now could they? There sitting on a bench was All Might in his civilian form. He had deep dark circles under his eyes, and oddly enough he was sitting with Sir Night Eye, his former sidekick. Sir Night Eye was wearing a suit despite the fact that the two were sitting on a bench on the beach. You should have listened to me, Sir Night Eye said. If you had, the boy wouldn't be dead. Way to be blunt, sir. Don't you think I know that? All Might asked, his voice seeming to be shaking. I regret what I did to that boy every day. I didn't invite you here to tell me what I already know. It shocked Izuku that the symbol of peace would be upset by his death. After all, he was just quirkless, useless Deku. Right? Sir Night Eye sighed. I'm sorry. I forget you grew attached to him. All Might grew attached to him? But I saw so much of me in the boy Mirai, All Might confessed. I thought I could help him. Help him as Nana helped me. Yet I screwed that up, didn't I? How could he remind All Might of himself? And who the hell was Nana? It's important to learn from mistakes, Sir Night Eye told him. Young Midoriya wasn't a mistake, Mirai, All Might frowned. I gave him one for all too early. I knew he needed more training and I gave it to him anyway. He was perfect for it. From the moment I met him, something told me he would be a perfect choice for One for All. What? Was All Might standing up for him? Did it return to you? Sir Night Eye asked. Izuku held his breath. This was it. The moment of truth. No, One for All died with young Midoriya. All Might replied. Izuku stared at his mentor. One for All had died with him. The 2, or 3 with Izuku, sat in silence for a while. All Might, I have something to confess, Sir Night Eye said, breaking the silence. I have reason to believe that AFO is still alive. Who was AFO? What did this mean? How screwed were they? F-. All Might said. Both Izuku and Sir Night Eye were taken aback by this. Great, the world was going to end, wasn't it? Do you think we should start telling people about All for One? Sir Night Eye asked. Yes, I think that would be the best course of action. We should probably start with Nizu. All Might sighed. I'll talk to my contact in the commission so we can set up a meeting, Sir Night Eye explained. Maybe the world wasn't screwed yet? Far away in a secluded facility was a man. A man that was known to the world as All for One. All for One hadn't slept for over 2 months. Ever since he felt his brother's presence leave the world. It was exactly like the time he died. All for One had spent months trying to understand why and what had happened to his brother's quirk. Last night he came across the answer. Midoriya Izuku. Midoriya Izuku was a plain quirkless boy who had mysteriously obtained a quirk only for it to kill him the moment he first used it. All for One wasn't sure what to do with that information. His whole point of going forward was to take One for All back and reclaim what was rightfully a Shigaraki quirk. Now the quirk was gone. His whole purpose was taken away. What was the point? All Might would eventually lose the remaining embers of One for All and thus finally ending the century-long feud. Was he supposed to continue guiding Tamura down a path he had set him on? What was he supposed to do? His greatest enemy was effectively dead. He had finally won, and yet it didn't feel like a victory. He felt empty. He had never expected anyone to truly win. He thought he would be trapped in the endless dance of One for All and All for One forever. Now there was nothing. No point. He could help Tamura attain his goal, but the whole point of Tamura was to control him into getting what he wanted. So again, what was the point? So he made a call. The voice on the other end picked up. Hello, Tamura, I wanted to ask you a question. All for One told his successor. What do you want to do in life? What is your purpose? Tamura was quiet. I want to take down All Might. Yes, but why? All for One prompted. I don't know. Tamura said, I guess to show how corrupt hero society is. I mean, you were the only one to help me when I was a kid. I'm kind of the prime example of how corrupt our society is. Thank you, Tamura. That will be all for One said, hanging up with a new purpose. Take down the corrupt society. Izuku didn't like Sir Night Eye in the slightest. He was rude and annoying and just an all-around JRK who would bring up All Might's mistakes at every turn only to apologize a few seconds later. All Might would just sit there and take it further, beating himself up about the whole thing. So Izuku decided to go back to the Bakugo house. At first he hesitated, not sure what he would see. The incident had happened 3 weeks ago, but something like that didn't go away in 3 weeks. So Izuku spent the night outside, working up the courage to go into the house. Spoiler: he never went into the house. Instead, he followed Kaken when he left for school. Kaken seemed off. He had faint dark circles under his eyes and he seemed quieter, which is something Izuku never in a million years would have thought to have seen from Bakugo Katsuki. He also seemed sad, yet also angry. When he arrived at school, he noticed his desk. Over the years many things had littered Izuku's desk: spider lilies, death threats, explosions, the word Deku over and over again, and that one time someone wrote in red paint case is a big bold font. Now that Izuku was thinking about it, the one time was the only time anyone had gotten in trouble with the bully. Today, however, his desk was covered in the classic spider lilies. Kaken sent a murderous glare to his former desk before taking a seat on his own. As kids filed in, some looked at the desk mortified while others giggled at it. Once the teacher arrived, the desk was finally addressed. I would like to remind the class that Mr. Midoriya died in a quirk. We shouldn't insult his death by placing spider lilies on his desk, the teacher said, much to Izuku's surprise. That had never happened before. But sensei, we all know Deku was quirkless, one kid in the front row shouted with a sly grin. How could he have died in a quirk accident? The class erupted into giggles. Yeah, how'd the quirkless kid die of his own quirk? Another one asked. I bet he didn't even have a quirk and he just died in the exam and UA covered it up, one suggested. Tells us what happened, Bakugo. You were there, right? One asked. All eyes moved to the silent teen who was staring daggers at almost everyone. Izuku had never seen Kaken so mad. The class hadn't either. Many quickly looked back to the teacher. Shut the F up, Kaken said. The class jumped in shock. You have no FING right to talk about him like that. The entire class, including Izuku, was taken aback by this statement. Hey Bakugo, what gives? You made fun of Deku too. Izuku's former bully asked. Shut up. Shut the F up, Bakugo said, shooting a murderous look the bully's way. Now, Mr. Bakugo, please calm down. We all understand grief shows up in mysterious ways. The teacher told him. Then returned to class like normal as Kaken put his head down. What the actual F had Izuku just witnessed? Meanwhile, in another part of town, Inko Midoriya was at the store. Mitsuki had suggested she try and get out of the house, thus leading her to a small shop on the corner of a street and her current predicament. A sickly-looking man had run into her, literally, causing all her groceries to be knocked onto the floor. Oh shit. I am so sorry, I wasn't looking where I was dash, the man started before stopping mid-sentence. His eyes seemed to fill with regret and sorrow, however, Inko didn't catch that. That's all right, sir. Inko told him with a small smile. Ah yes, I'm Yagi, Toshinori. You are? He asked nervously. Midoriya, Inko smiled. They both just stared at each other for a while. Neither really knew what to say or do. I should probably help you pick these up. Yagi chuckled nervously, finally breaking the silence. Oh, Yagi-sen, you're too kind. Inko smiled and the two quickly cleaned up the mess. Izuku wasn't really sure what to make of Kaken. He seemed upset by his death, and yet angry at the same time with him. To be completely honest, Izuku hadn't even thought that his death would have affected Kaken. He did tell him to take a swan dive. If anything, he expected him to be glad. Kami, he needed new friends. When Kaken arrived home, Izuku very hesitantly followed him inside. Luckily, all his worries seemed to melt away as he saw his mother. She looked still like she was grieving him, but she didn't have a dead look in her eyes. Her eyes had faint dark circles and they were less puffy from when he had last seen her. She almost looked happier. Katsuki. She smiled. It wasn't her usual smile, but it was still a smile. How was school? It was fine, Kaken grumbled, before stomping up the stairs to his room. Izuku decides to follow him. Saying Kaken's room was a mess was an understatement. He had clothes and books all over the floor, almost like he had flung them around in a fit of rage. He had at least 5 different dishes, all dirty. If Izuku wasn't going to freak him out, he would have started to clean to room. What surprised him the most was on Kaken's desk was an unopened letter from Yue. Kaken stared at the letter like it was a villain. Why, oh, you should open it, he said, again not sure if anyone could hear him. Almost like Kaken had heard him, he reached for the letter. He hadn't heard him, right? Kaken opened the letter and a small disc fell out of the envelope. What the F dash? Kaken said, picking up the disc. Suddenly a blue light came on, which caused Kaken to immediately drop the disc. The disc projected a man with long back hair, a gray scarf, and baggy black clothes. If Izuku didn't know any better, he would have assumed the man was homeless, but Izuku recognized him as a pro-hero Eraserhead. Izuku had once overheard a conversation about him getting Ms. Tanaka's cat down from a tree, and after many days of searching the web, he had finally found a video of him fighting and his hero name. "Do I have to do this?" Eraserhead asked in a monotone voice. "Yes, you have to do at least 2 of these show," said a man from behind the camera that sounded like Present Mike. "Fine," Eraserhead grumbled. "Congratulations, Mr. Bakugo. You passed the written portion and got first place on the practical. Welcome to your hero academia." Eraserhead gestured to a table. There on the first row was Kaken's name with 77 villain points and 0 rescue points. Izuku didn't expect there to be a rescue portion to the practical, although Kaken's results were what he expected. What he didn't expect to he was his own name. There his name was with 60 rescue points in 7th place. Kaken didn't look at his name, no, he stared at Izuku's. He stared at Izuku's for a long time, completely missing anything else the video stated. He started at it until the disc shut off. He still stared at the place it used to be for a long time. "You did good, Kakon. I'm so proud of you. I'm sorry that I didn't know they would even have my name anywhere near Yo-Yu's," Izuku said after he noticed his former bully's eye to have what he could only assume to be tears. The room filled with an uncomfortable silence. At least to Izuku was uncomfortable. Kaken thought he was alone. "Hey brat, dinner's ready," Auntie yelled from the other room. "Coming, hag." Kaken bit back before wiping his eyes. "So, Inko, how was your day?" Uncle Masaru asked with a small smile. "It was," Mom started before taking a pause, leaving the room in anticipation. "Nice? I ran into a nice man named Yagi when I was out. It caused me to drop the groceries but helped me pick them up. I think he might have been a bit spooked by me." Yagi, why was that name familiar? Izuku couldn't put his finger on what was so familiar about that name. "That's nice, Inko," Auntie smiled softly. She looked at Mom like she was going to break at any second, and Izuku couldn't blame her. "So, Katsuki, where are you planning to go to high school?" Mom asked. All eye moved to Kaken. He seemed to be caught off guard by the sudden question. Well, I got into you. So they're probably," Kaken said slowly before taking another bite of his okonomiyaki. "That's great, son. I'm so proud of you." Uncle Masaru smiled. "Good to know you finally picked one." Auntie scoffed. "That's nice, Katsuki," Mom smiled. "They sent me Izuku's letter. He apparently had gotten enough points to pass. I think they're adding his name to a wall of some sort." Mom looked like she was going to cry or maybe break down again. The entire table sat in silence, waiting for something to happen. "I'm going to bed," Kaken announced after a while. "Katsuki, you've barely touched your food," Mom frowned. "It's fine to let the brat go," Auntie said. Kaken stood up and quickly left the room. "I didn't mean to put a damper on Katsuki's wonderful news." Mom cried. But Izuku couldn't hear it because he was too busy chasing after Kaken. I guess something doesn't change even in death. Katsuki had promised himself he wouldn't cry for the stupid, reckless nerd. He wouldn't cry and he wouldn't be angry at UA for letting him try to take the exam. He wouldn't be mad at Auntie for not noticing the nerd's quirk sooner. He wouldn't be angry with himself for telling the nerd to off himself. He wouldn't tear his room apart again like he did when he first got the news. He wouldn't talk about what happened with any stupid shrinks. He couldn't. Yet here he was, crying. All because Auntie mentioned him. The worst part about the whole thing was he could feel the demon nerd in the room with him like some crazy mourning mother. He could have sworn the nerd had told him to open the letter from Yue. Almost like he had been like, "Don't worry. I may have died in the exam, but you can still go to the school that got me killed." Like he would need his permission or something. Katsuki knew that no one at school cared for the nerd. The only people who cared were Auntie, the old hag, and Dad. Yet how dare they insult him? How dare they make fun of him? He knew the nerd probably kept his quirk a secret for a long time, thinking he could figure it out himself. He knew the nerd's death was the nerd's own fault, not Katsuki's. Yet he still felt responsible in a way. After all, what kind of hero tells someone to jump off a building? Cough cough endeavor cough cough. Katsuki sat on his bed for a long time, not sure what to do with himself. That was until someone or something softly knocked on his bedroom door. Katsuki got up from his bed thinking it was probably Auntie or Dad. Since the old hag wouldn't knock, she would have just bursted into the room. What the F dash? Katsuki muttered to himself. He had opened the door to see a box. A box? The box was labeled Izuku's notebooks. Auntie had brought a few things of the nerds over since she had such a small apartment. But what was this doing here? How had it gotten there? Katsuki picked up the box and moved it to his desk. Inside the box were 31 notebooks. Katsuki thought the nerd only had 15 of the notebooks were quirk analyst, 4 of them were on combat, 2 were on support items, and 8 were on villain analyst. 1 was unlabeled and the other was titled American Dream, a training regiment. All but 2 of them shared the same main title, Hero Analyst for the Future. Okay, now what? Katsuki said, not really expecting an answer. However, the universe decided to give him one by throwing the unlabeled notebook in his face. I can help. Something told him. So Katsuki did. He opened the notebook. Inside was a shitty sketch of himself. Yep, defiantly not creepy whatsoever. He totally wasn't just given a notebook with a picture of him inside of it that belonged to his dead peer. Nope, not at all creepy. The sketch had words written above it in shitty handwriting, but it looked like the notebook was titled, Things I Know About Kaken That Could Help With Him Becoming a Hero. No wonder the title wasn't on the front, it was sheet and way too long. Katsuki put the notebook down, so the universe gave him a shitty sketch of himself. What else was he going to do with it? Then all of a sudden the notebook gets picked up by nothing. Then it's flipped through until it lands on a page towards the end. The book then floats over to him and is placed next to him. What the F dash? Katsuki mumbles to himself before taking a look at the page the notebook was left on. He wasn't sure he should be happy or creeped out that there were 2 whole pages dedicated to his quirk, fighting style, and possible support items costume ideas. He had seen some of the ideas before since the nerd used to show him different ideas for hero where before he was officially diagnosed as quirkless. Was this the universe's way of telling him to go for it? Become a hero despite his past? It was at that moment Katsuki Bakugo decided to not become a hero to be the best but to become a hero in his late friend's honor. After all, he didn't deserve to be a hero, but the nerd did. For Izuku. Inside the shattered quirk, one for all, the remaining holders stood in the crumbling void. Before OFA was even given away to the young Izuku Midoriya, the void was already crumbling from years of use. When the quirk began to transfer over to Midoriya, the void crumbled more, but that was supposed to happen. Then the connection was abruptly severed, and soon the remaining holder knew that Izuku Midoriya was dead. What do we do second? Shinomori Hikage, the 4th holder, asked. His form was already fading. It was only a matter of time before he would be completely lost. The 2nd, whose name had been lost to time, stared blankly at the place where the 1st was supposed to sit. The 1st, 7th, and 5th had already had their souls, quirks, and knowledge transferred over to Midoriya when he died. He took them with him when he died. Aye, the 2nd said, stumbling over his words. He had just lost his only reason for going forward with that shitty plan to save all for one. I don't know. We have to come up with some plan. And the 6th shouted, his form just a flicker to go out in a few days. 8th still thinks he is gone. I agree with the 6th. The 3rd, whose name was also lost to time, spoke up. We can't leave them without someone to fight against All for One. He's gone, the 2nd said. All for One has won. There is nothing to be done. This world is doomed. There must be something we could do, Shinomori said. We can't just give up because One for All is broken. The 8th needs to tell his people what is going on, the 3rd stated. The question is, how do we let him know All for One is still alive? What about that sidekick of his? Sir Knight and offered. Didn't he say 8 would die to a villain even after they thought All for One was gone? Wouldn't he know? Maybe we should try and get him to meet with Sir Knight? Wasn't he a bit obsessive? Shinomori cringed. Is that really the best idea to see him again? He would be the only one we know of that could let 8 know, the 3rd countered. This is for the great of good. Not whether or not we feel comfortable. I wish we could go back to my house in the woods, Shinomori murmured. Shut up, hermit. We're trying to have a serious meeting. And snapped. I miss 7, at least she would keep you two from bickering. The third frowned. Maybe we'll finally be at rest, the second spoke up. We could finally move on. Wherever that may be to. We can't just leave them with nothing. And shouted. I'm not saying that, the second frowned. I'm saying we help a little, but at the end of the day, we're done. It isn't worth it for us to hold on with all our might just to hold on. Especially when he has already won our fight. Second, you can't be serious. I have never known you to give up like this, the third said, concerned for his old friend and mentor. Our fight was long over second. We have been barely able to contact the current holder. First only contacted him once long enough to have a 2-minute conversation. We are just a group of dead heroes trying to find a way to defeat our killer. I want to rest, we should get to rest. We can't continue the fight. All for one won a long time ago, second told them. He stood from his chair and walked into the darkness of the crumbling void, leaving the rest of the remaining holders stunned to silence. After all, second was right. What could they do? Midoriya, Izuku was their only hope, and now the boy was gone along with half the other holders. There was truly nothing they could do from inside the void. For inside the void time passes differently. For inside the void things are connected. Pro-hero matter walked into their hero agency, the people matter, at an early hour than normal. 5 a.m. to be exact. They immediately knew something was wrong. Normally Jumper, their underground hero colleague, would be in the meeting room either working on a case, patching up wounds, or catching up on sleep. Instead, Jumper was nowhere to be found. Jumper was gone. Izuku was practically vibrating with excitement. He was going to be following Kaken to UA. He was going to get to see the future heroes of tomorrow begin their journey. It was the second greatest thing to be able to do at UA. Izuku was trying not to think about the fact that if he was alive he would have been in that class. Kaken during the past 2 weeks that led up to the first day had been very quiet. It was kind of freaking Izuku out a bit. He watched his former bully and tormentor to go from being someone who would have blasted you to kingdom come if you so look at him the wrong way to quiet. Kaken looked amazing in the UA uniform. It was almost like it was made for him or like everything in his life was leading up to that uniform. Wait, Katsuki! His mother shouted just before Kaken stepped out the door. Yeah? Kaken asked, turning around to face her. Shouldn't we take a picture? His mother asked, holding up a camera. It was a bit odd to see someone not taking pictures on the first day of school. It was probably normal for Kaken though. Kaken's face morphed from one of confusion to one of sadness. Thanks, Auntie, Kaken said with a slight smile. I would love for you to take my photo. Oh good. Mom smiled before taking a quick photo. Have a good day at school, Katsuki. With that, Kaken was off. Kaken took the train, which was an interesting experience for Izuku. He almost fell out of the train when it first started moving. He also noticed that there were other ghosts on the train. Izuku hadn't seen or talked to anyone since he died, let alone other ghost. Thought it made sense, he couldn't have been the only ghost. A few people on the train recognized the UA uniform and gave Kaken congratulations for getting into such a prestigious school. Once Kaken had made it to UA and found the 1A classroom, it became clear Kaken was very early. Not even his homeroom teacher was in the room yet. Kaken found himself a desk and sat down, putting up his feet in typical Kaken fashion. After a few moments, he pulled out the notebook Izuku had given him 2 weeks early and flipped through the pages. To be honest, Izuku wasn't sure what he was doing when he gave the notebook to Kaken. Kaken was just so down and Izuku couldn't actually talk to him, so he just gave him a notebook he had been planning to give to him once they both got into UA. Even after their friendship came to a sour end had it kept up the notebook. Izuku knew that if he gave up the notebook then their friendship would have been truly over. Take your feet down, right? This insisted. You are disrespecting the school and the people who made that desk, shouted a voice from the doorway. There stood the guy who had interrupted Present Mix's speech at the exam. His red eyes studied Kaken for a moment. TC, Kaken said, rolling his eyes. I mean it right this instant. Take your feet down, he shouted again, now moving his arm up and down so fast it made a chopping sound through the air. What did your old school put a stick up your butt? Kaken asked, closing the notebook. That statement caused the other one to gasp. I will have you know I went to Somei Junior High School, an incredibly prestigious school, he shouted. Whatever rich kid, Kaken. Huff. Which only caused him to shout at Kaken more. Izuku's mind wandered for a bit. What would the heroes of the future be like? Would one be able to see him? What would that mean? Would Kaken completely freak? If anyone could see, he would definitely try and keep his connection to Kaken a secret. Don't want to freak him out too much. Hello there, fellow ghost, said a voice, making Izuku jump. Izuku looked up to see a teenager 1 or 2 years older than him. He had blue wavy hair that looked like clouds and blue eyes to match. He was wearing an older version of the UA uniform from a few years ago. The name's Shirakumo Oboro, but you can call me Oboro, he smiled. Midoriya, Izuku said awkwardly. I guess you can call me Izuku. Nice to meet you, Izuku. Oboro smiled. What brings you to UA? Well, I was following my friend Kaken, Izuku explained, then pointed to Kaken. Nice. My friends from when I was alive work here, Oboro shrugged. I kinda just hang around. In fact, I was just checking out the fresh meat. Fresh meat? Izuku asked, confused. Yep, Oboro grinned, popping the pea. The first years. Their homeroom teacher, always expels one of them just to keep them on their toes. He can be a real hard ass, but he's really just a big old softy. He expels someone on the first day of school? Izuku gulped. Well, not normally. He treats it as a logical ruse, but never actually expels anyone. Oboro explained. He only starts expelling kids for real after the second week. A year he expelled his whole class. His whole class? Izuku shouted. Why? He just wants to make sure the up-and-coming heroes actually have potential, Oboro explained. Or something like that. Is he a pro hero? Izuku asked. Yeah, but you wouldn't know him, Oboro told him. Try me. Tell me what his quirk is and I bet I can guess it. Izuku smiled. Well, his quirk allows him to erase other people's quirks, Oboro said, giving Izuku a skeptical look. Eraserhead? Izuku shouted. It's Eraserhead, right? Yeah, Oboro said, shocked. How'd you know? I was a late bloomer on my quirk, but I still wanted to be a hero, Izuku explained. I decided to research underground heroes just in case one was quirkless and had slipped through the cracks. I came across Eraserhead on an underground hero fan forum. Interesting, Oboro said, scanning Izuku like he was studying him. So what's your story, kid? Huh? Izuku asked, confused. How'd you end up here? Also, what's with the t-shirt? Oboro laughed. Oh, well, I'm not sure about the t-shirt. I don't own it or anything like it, Izuku explained. I died due to a quirk accident. Oof, I got a building dropped on me, Oboro winced. The two chatted for a bit longer. Eventually, the class slowly arrived. Oboro sat on the teacher's desk at the front of the room. Izuku decided it would be less weird if he sat on the floor in the back away from Kaken. God, this whole being dead thing was weird. What was even weirder was that Izuku felt like someone was staring at him. Which seemed absurd, no one could see him. He was a ghost. The class continued to talk and get to know each other, so when the class door opened and a yellow human-sized caterpillar thing came into the classroom, they missed it. Oboro, however, grinned wildly at the sight of it. Who is that, Oboro? Izuku asked. Sho. Oboro grinned. I wonder how long it will take for the newbies to notice him. How long is the longest you've seen a class not notice him? Izuku asked, tilting his head like a puppy. Sho once went unnoticed for 3 hours when his class was in the gym training for the sports festival, and the only reason they notice him was because Sho expelled a kid. Oboro laughed. So he'll make himself known to the class eventually? Izuku asked. Probably, Oboro shrugged. Then, as if summoned by Oboro's words, Eraserhead stood up, unzipping his yellow sleeping bag and stood at the podium. Yet the class still didn't notice him. God, how blind were they? If you're here to make friends, then you should probably find the door, Eraserhead told the class after clearing his throat to make himself known. After all, this is a hero course, you need to take it seriously. The class went silent. Yes, Sho. Oboro chuckled. Already scaring the newbies. It hasn't even been 30 minutes. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. Time is precious as heroes, you will do well to remember that, Eraserhead frowned. Who is this guy? Whispered a student with bright yellow hair and a black lightning bolt similar to Pikachu. I am Aizawa, Shoyuda. Your homeroom teacher, Aizawa-sensei frowned. He took out a stack of UA gym uniforms. Now, put these on, and then make your way to the PE grounds. The students quickly stood up and formed a line to get their gym uniforms before making their way to the locker rooms to change. Oboro and Izuku followed Aizawa-sensei to the PE grounds. A boy with split white-red hair and a large scar on the left side of his face was the first to arrive. Is it just me, or is that kid staring at us? Oboro asked. But he can't see us, right? Izuku asked, turning to Oboro. Sometimes if you experience something that brings you closest to death you can see and hear ghosts, Oboro explained. The boy with the split white-red hair stiffened at these words. He could be one of the rare few. Izuku stared at the spilt white-red-haired boy and the split white-red-haired boy stared back. Alright, let's get this over with, Aizawa-sensei grumbled as the remaining students trickled in. A quirk apprehension test? The blue-haired boy that was yelling at Kaken earlier asked. Yes, a quirk apprehension test, Aizawa-sensei parroted back grumpily. But what about the opening ceremony? Whined a pink-skinned girl in the back with wild pink hair to match. If you want to be heroes you can't waste time, Aizawa-sensei huffed. You all understand UA's reputation for freedom on campus? That freedom isn't just for students, it's for teachers too. He does this every year. It's kind of funny, Oboro grinned, snapping Izuku out of his staring contest with the split white-red-haired boy. Now this quirk apprehension test will consist of softball pitch, standing long jump, 50-meter dash, endurance run, grip strength test, sustained sideways jumps, upper body strength exercises, and seated toe touch. You may remember these from middle school, Aizawa-sensei huffed. Bakugo, would you please step into the circle? Kaken walked up to the circle and eyed his teacher suspiciously. Now, how far could you throw a softball in middle school? Aizawa-sensei asked blankly. 67 meters, Kaken huffed. Try using your quirk to throw the ball, Aizawa-sensei instructed and handed him the ball. Kaken studied the ball for a moment before shouting, "Die!" as he threw the ball as far as he could with his quirk. The class gasped in awe. Before you can begin to learn new things, you must know what you're capable of, Aizawa said, showing the class the score of 705.2 meters. This is going to be so much fun. Smiled guy with bright red hair. Other students voiced their own excitement. Oboro grinned at the first years like he knew something they didn't. Too bad that kid just sealed their fate. What do you mean? Izuku asked, confused. Oboro just grinned in response. Fun. Aizawa-sensei snapped, causing the class to be deathly silent. So you were all planning on spending the next 3 years here having fun? Very well, new rule. The student who places last will be expelled. The class erupted into panic. After all, it was only the first day of school and the class was being faced with the threat of expulsion. Oboro cackled at the first-year students. The split white-red-haired boy shot a look of confusion and concern towards the two ghosts. He could probably see them. God, that would be odd to try and explain. Like, oh hey, I'm dead, you can see ghosts. Izuku didn't think that would go over very well. The only students that didn't seem to panic were the split white-red-haired boy, Kaken, a girl with a high black ponytail, and someone Izuku could only describe as crazy. The crazy-looking boy was cackling along with Oboro. The fact that Izuku was sure the crazy-looking boy couldn't see either of them was even more terrifying. Quiet, shouted Aizawa-sensei. His eyes glowed red. It caused the whole class to flinch as their quirks were suddenly turned off. This is going to be fun to watch. Oboro cackled, sitting down with a bowl of popcorn. Where did he even get that? Maybe it would be fun to watch. It differently gave Izuku the ability to watch their quirk in action and learn their names. Shoto wasn't sure what to make of his class, or anyone his age really. They all seemed stuck between acting like adults and like kids. He especially wasn't sure what to make of the two teens sitting out. No one else had seemed to see them or even talk to them. One was wearing a UA uniform and the other had a shirt that read, "Ghost in Training." Not even the teacher had noticed them, and Shoto was growing curious. Shoto had seen people that other ignored since he was anytime he brought it up someone they would tell him no one was there. His sister would look at him with concern and his father would mutter about how his mother was to blame. So he didn't ever meet on it to anyone. He was crazy, at least he didn't think so. Todoroki, you're up, Aizawa-sensei grumbled, handing him a ball. Shoto studied the ball for a moment. His quirk did help him in all the other tests, but it would appear he couldn't really do anything with it at the moment. At least nothing interesting. He shot a look back towards the green-haired boy, who seemed to jump under his gaze. Who was he? Maybe after class he would ask him. After all, he was the only one not wearing a UA uniform. What is he looking at? Murmured one of his classmates. Shoto ignored the comment and threw the ball. Aizawa-sensei showed him the screen, which showed 98 meter. He should have done better, but 98 would have to do for now. Shoto returned, studying the strange green-haired boy. Monoma, your turn, Aizawa-sensei informed a blonde-haired boy who had been cackling earlier with the blue-haired teen sitting next to the strange green-haired. He grinned wildly and tapped Uraraka, the girl who had gotten infinity, on the shoulder, copying her quirk. Shoto, though Monoma's quirk was something to be wary about. If he copied his, there would be question on way he wouldn't use Endeavor's fire. Not that Shoto wouldn't mind taking down that BSRD, he just knew it was impossible and would result in anyone who would try to help getting hurt. Plus, Fuyumi seemed annoyed any time Natsuo brought it up in the small conversation he had overheard over the years. Soon enough everyone had finished. Monoma had taken first place. Which made sense, he seemed to go near to last and copy the quirk of whomever had gotten the highest score. Momo had gotten second, which was expected. Shoto found his name next to third. He wished he could have done better, but UA was his chance to learn normally. Someone named Hagakure had gotten last and was now shaking in fear. That was too bad, her quirk didn't really help her in the tests, so it was expected. Mineta, you're expelled, Aizawa-sensei announced. Several students looked confused, however a few girls signed in relief. Get your syllabus from my desk and go home. Wah! Mineta, a short boy had been making Momo uncomfortable early, shouted in confusion. But I got 19th? It was too late, Aizawa-sensei had already disappeared. Though the quirk apprehension test was a logical ruse, Momo frowned. It seems to be, but why would he expel Mineta? Bikazu the grape fucker was being a fucking creep around the girls. Bakugo, the one who had gotten fourth, announced, causing the whole class to stare at him. Bakugo just went back inside with the green-haired boy close in tow. Shoto would have to find a time to talk to the stretch boy tomorrow if he shows up again. Shoto made his way back to the classroom and packed up his thing quickly. His BSRD of a father would be waiting for him. Across the city, say Inko, in a coffee shop. Mitsuki had suggested she take time to check it out today. She was sipping on a nice green tea and listening to the ambiance of the coffee shop when a familiar man walked into the shop. Yagi-san. Inko smiled. Nice seeing you here. Midoriya-san, Yagi said after a moment. I must apologize again for knocking over your grocery the other day ago. Oh, it's fine, Yagi-san, Inko smiled. I was wondering if you would like to go for a walk sometime? Maybe to that beach that was miraculously cleared. I would love that, Midoriya-san, Yagi-san blushed. Great, it's a date, Inko smiled. Izuku had been watching as the remaining students trickled out of the 1A classroom. Kaken seemed to have been abducted by a pink-haired girl and a red-haired guy. Izuku was planning on checking on All Might, but Oboro seemed to have other plans for them. However, Izuku's new friend failed to share said plans with Izuku. So now, here he was, following the blue-haired ghosts through the halls of UA with no explanation where they were going. Finally, after a really long walk and a few wrong turns, the duo arrived at a door. The door was, well, a door. What are we doing again? Izuku asked quietly. He more or less half expected Oboro to beat him to a pulp now that they appeared to be alone. Did that say something about his prior experiences with friends? Probably. But the afterlife didn't exactly have a mental health specialist that he would be able to set up an appointment with. You're about to meet the ghosts of UA. Oboro smiled. We meet here once a month as a kinda info meeting for what we've learned about the spirit world and to catch new ghosts up or deal with new SG people. SG people? Izuku asked, confused. Oh, right, you don't know the terminology, Oboro frowned. ASG person is a person that can see ghosts. Could you remind me what causes people to be able to see ghosts? Izuku asked. He was sure Oboro had said something about it earlier, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Well, first off, there are two different types of people who can see ghosts. SG people can see ghosts based on a few determining factors that will get explained in the meeting and normally have been able to see ghosts after a near-death experience at a young age. The TSD people can see like remnants of the ghosts or see ghosts like SG. It kinda depends on how near their near-death experience was, Oboro chuckled to himself. Anyways, TSG people can only see ghosts temporarily. So, depending on how old and how close to death you were, you can see ghosts for either a short PRD of time or your whole life? Izuku summed it up. Pretty much, although it's not exactly precise, we're kinda just taking what we see and trying to make some sense of it, Oboro shrugged. That's not confusing at all, Izuku muttered to himself as Oboro opened the door to an empty classroom where 3 other ghosts sat. One was a short furry mouse-like creature that reminded Izuku of Nizu a bit. Another was an older woman who looked like she was from the Middle Ages. The final ghost was a man in his 20s who was wearing an American Army uniform, probably from the First World War. Oboro, smiled the older woman. Oh, you brought a new friend. Yep, everyone, this is Izuku, newly deceased, Oboro smiled, gesturing to Izuku. Izuku, meet the ghosts of UA. Oh, Oboro, you're so funny, giggled the short furry mouse-like creature. You make us sound so magical. It's honestly childish, muttered the man. It is nice to meet you, dearie, the older woman smiled. You may call me Yuri. My turn, declared the short furry mouse-like creature. I'm Zumi. I guess I'll go next, huffed the man. Name's Carter Williams. It's nice to meet you all, Izuku said with a small bow. He's so adorable with those silly little human greetings. Zumi giggled. Shouldn't we start the meeting? Williams huffed. We need to stay on time. Carter, we are all already here, no need to stress out about time. Yuri smiled in an attempt to comfort Williams. I mean, we do have all the time in the world, being dead and all, Oboro joked, muttered to himself. To think he's really 30, Williams frowned. You would think his sense of humor would have improved. Well then I think we should start. Yuri gestured to the seats set up in a circle like an RA meeting you would see on TV. How about we all find a seat? Yes, Williams grinned. Wouldn't want to start the meeting late. Zumi dragged Izuku over to the 2 seats closet to the window. Oboro opted to sit next to Izuku and Williams took the open seat between Zumi and Yuri. Zumi was almost vibrating with excitement next to Izuku. Oboro was still giving Williams the sink eye and Williams looked like he was about to beat the sheet out of Oboro. Izuku was all too familiarly with the look. Now Oboro, Yuri started. How much have you explained to Izuku-san? Just the whole living seeing us, Oboro shrugged. Also we might have a SG in 1A. So the bare minimum? Williams scoffed. So, Izuku, what can you do so far? You're asked, ignoring Williams's comment. What can I do? Izuku asked, confused. Well, each ghost can do different things. Depending on what you can do, we try to classify each ghost, Yuri explained. We predict that there are 4 levels. However, most of the ghost community believes there to be 5. The ghost community? Izuku asked, even more confused. Can I explain this one? Zumi asked. I don't see why not, Yuri smiled. Okay, so, the ghost community is basically everyone that is a ghost and aware of the fact that they're a ghost, Zumi began to explain. Certain places that ghosts can be drawn to, like UA, are like meeting places for wandering ghost, aka level 3 to 4-5. Once a year near Day of the Dead, when ghosts are the strongest, we have a meeting. The meeting place is usually determined at the last meeting. Their ghosts share info about what we've learned about the ghost world. It's like a ghost convention, Oboro told Izuku. So I need to tell you what I can do? Izuku asked. Yes, Yuri smiled. We need to determine if you're a wandering ghost. Ever since Shino moved on, we haven't been able to attend a ghost meeting unless Oboro's people are near the meeting place. I don't know everything I can do, Izuku admitted. I've only been a ghost for 2 or 3 months. That's all right, Zukuen. Zumi's smile shouted. You don't always know at first. It takes a bit to figure it all out. Also, do you mind me calling you Zukuen? It's such a cute human nickname. Yeah, I don't mind. Izuku smiled at the energetic ghost. So about that SG? Yuri asked, turning to Oboro. Right, you guys might remember the kid's father. Oboro started. Todoroki Enji? Aka Endeavor. Not sure what his hero standing is, but his kid Todoroki, Shoto is in 1. Me and Izuku were watching show's class. Anyways, the kid was staring at us for a bit. It could be a false alarm, but I just thought I should report it. I remember Endeavor. Zumi frowned. I didn't like his attitude much. Izuku, do you know his hero standing? Williams asked. He's the number 2 hero. Izuku reveled. Williams frowned. It could have been caused by a villain attack. That would make sense, Oboro added. The kid had a nasty scar on the left side of his face. What are we doing? Izuku asked, feeling like he had missed some information. We're trying to determine a possible cause for the young Todoroki to be a SG, Yuri explained. That way we can try to approach him so he doesn't. Going telling people he can see floating people. However, if he's a TSG, we don't normally interact with them since they could have the ability to see the dead for a few days or a few years, Williams concluded. Oh, Izuku thought for a moment. Well, the scar on his face looked older, not new. And you know so much about scars, Williams said sarcastically, rolling his eyes. Don't be mean to the newbie. Zumi said, giving Williams the stink eye. You were saying Zukuen? Actually, I do know a fair amount, Izuku muttered. I went through a phase where I tried to figure out the origins of the top 10 heroes' scars. I also have a few myself. Well, I think we have discussed everything we need to discuss, Yuri decided. Unless anyone has anything else to add. 1A is going on a field trip in a week, Zumi cheerfully announced. How do you always know that before I do? Boro frowned. One of the people I literally haunt is one, as homeroom teacher. It's a secret. Zumi laughed. Izuku smiled at the two. He could definitely at least get used to this new life, undead life, afterlife. However, something in the back of his head seemed to say that this wasn't going to last. Kurogiri couldn't remember anything about before Sensei. He couldn't remember anything before young Shigaraki, which is probably why he noticed the strange change in Sensei's behavior. It was almost as though the man had given up on his own goals and was devoting all his attention to Tamura. Sensei went from checking in on Tamura every few months to calling once a week. Tamura was quite overwhelmed with the new development. He was being given a lot more say and encouragement to plan attacks. Soon enough, Sensei suggests that Tamura try and put together a team, to which Tamura decide they needed to do something to put them on the map. Something big that would show that society was rested on a shaky pillars that would fall at the fault of the heroes. To show that the League was here to change the story and expose fakes. The more this was discussed, the more Sensei pushed for Tamura to attack Yue. Kurogiri felt like this was the worst idea ever. Then again, he wasn't supposed to feel things. He felt like there was something at Yue that he cared about. He wasn't supposed to care about things either. Yet he cared for Tamura like well, Kurogiri didn't know. All he could do was help Tamura with everything and anything he needed. Izuku had decided to take a notebook with him for the second day at Yue. He had stuffed the notebook into Kaken's bag to not freak him out and was waiting until the class used their quirks to take notes on them. Oboro had decided to annoy his humans, as the ghost had put it, which simply meant he was going to annoy Aizawa-sensei, Present Mike, or Midnight, since none of them were teaching the next class. For now, the class sat there waiting for their next teacher to arrive. That's when All Might walked through the door. He was smiling his trademark smile, but it seemed forced. Izuku knew his death affected him in some way. He just wasn't sure how much it affected him. He just wished he could talk to him. He wished he could talk to his mother. He wished he could talk to Kaken and anyone else who was hurting over his death. Tell them that even though it wasn't the best outcome, he was okay with it. That was definitely one downside to being a ghost. The class was loud with excitement at the sight of the number 1 hero, except for Kaken and the possible TE or SE. As far as Izuku knew, the boy was named Shoto Todoroki thanks to Oboro. However, Kaken seemed keen on calling him half and half. Kaken was quiet. If you didn't know him, you would have thought he was annoyed, but Izuku could see a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. "All right, heroes, grab your cases and get changed into them." All Might told the class, his voice was booming. The students all got up and grabbed their assigned cases. Izuku followed All Might to the room the class was using for their training. The first person to arrive was Todoroki. He stood next to Izuku. Maybe he was SG. Izuku started wonder if he should say something to him. One thing he noticed about Todoroki was the fact that half his face was covered in ice, which couldn't be comfortable. Although Todoroki might have been going for a cyborg look. Speaking of costumes, Izuku noticed that the brown-hair girl who he had tried to save at the exam looked a bit uncomfortable in her costume. The red-hair guy who stole Kaken yesterday wasn't wearing a shirt. Also, the invisible one was either not wearing anything but gloves and shoes or was wearing a DNA-coded hero suit similar to pro-hero, chameleons. In fact, the majority of the students had little to no protection against blunt attacks. Kaken was wearing the costume the two had designed when they were in preschool, just before Izuku had been diagnosed quirkless. He remembers suggesting that Kaken add the green utility belt, and the way Kaken had rolled his eyes before huffing to tell him to add the belt to the sketch. It made him a little happy to see the green belt. Another thing that had been added was the gauntlets from the notebook he had given Kaken a few days ago. It was almost the exact same design down to the color Izuku had used in the sketch. If Izuku had looked closer at the gauntlets, he would have noticed that engraved in small print at end of the left gauntlet was, "Originally designed by Izuku Midoriya. Now you all look like the great future pro-heroes of the future." All Might's voice boomed as the finally few students arrived. "Now let's see what you zygotes are made of. It's time for the battle trials. We'll be using the same mock cities from the entrance exam?" The boy with blue hair who had berated Kaken on the first day of school, or as Kaken called him, Four Eyes, asked. "We will actually be conducting these trails inside." All Might replied. "Although most villain cleanup appears to happen outside, the majority of the job is actually inside. Now you all will be randomly dash." "Why randomly?" Four Eyes interrupted. All Might seemed to freeze. "Why? Because you don't always get to pick who you are working with." All Might said after a moment. "Now you will all be put into teams of 2 dash. We only have 19 students." All Might. Four Eyes interrupted, again. Well then, does anyone wish to be in a team of 1 or wish to go again?" All Might asked the class. "Kaken looked like we has going to volunteer." "I can be on my own team," Todoroki announced, locking eyes with Izuku. It was almost as though he was trying to figure out why he hadn't been included in the overcount of the class. "Yeah, Todoroki was most definitely a she." "Thank you, young Todoroki." All Might smiled. "Now you will be put into teams of 2, with the exception of young Todoroki. You will each be assigned a role as villain or hero. The goal for the villains is to defend the bomb placed inside the build. The goal of the heroes is to retrieve the bomb and capture the villains." All Might began to pull names and announcing the teams. This allowed Izuku to figure out who was who. He made his way over to the corner of the room, just enough out of the way that he could still see the monitors, but not too much in the way that it could draw attention to him. He was excited to do some analysis on the heroes to be. First up was Monoma, the only person that scared Izuku more than Oboro, and Uraraka, who felt oddly familiar, versus Kaken and Ida, also known as Four Eyes. Izuku turned his attention to the screen. From what Izuku had seen during the quirk apprehension test, Monoma had the ability to copy other people's quirks from a set amount of time, and Uraraka had a 0G quirk similar to the girl who had stopped him from tripping at the entrance exam. She could be the same person. Izuku, of course, already knew and had done an analysis on Kaken, so he decided he would focus on the other 3. Ida seemed to have a quirk similar to Ingenium. The two were probably related since they shared a last name. Kaken and Ida had been given the villain team, and Uraraka and Monoma were the heroes. In each battle, All Might had built in 5 minutes for the teams to come up with a plan. It appeared that Monoma was coming up with a plan for the heroes. However, Kaken, in his most Kaken way, left Ida with the bomb, not even bothering to come up with it. "Is that notebook floating, Karo?" The frog quirk girl, Azuitu asked, interrupting Izuku's train of thought. Izuku froze, he had been found out. Izuku slowly looked up from his notebook only to come face first with Todoroki. Izuku jumped, which caused Todoroki's gaze to sharpen. Who are you? Todoroki asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Which made sense. If he had been able to see Ghost when he was alive, he wouldn't have wanted anyone to overhear him talking to what would appear to be nothing. Izuku managed to get out. To be completely honest, the poor ghost boy didn't really expect anyone but Oboro to talk to him. Why am I the only one who can see you? Todoroki asked. Is it some sort of quirk? No. Izuku wasn't sure how to explain this. I'm a ghost. You're probably the only one in the class that is a SG. What is an SG? Todoroki asked, studying the ghost. Also, how do I know you're not lying about being a ghost? Well, an SG is someone who can see ghost. They normal have had some sort of near-death experience at a young age. Todoroki's eyes went wide at the mention of a near-death experience, which probably meant that he had had one. As for how you know that I'm a ghost, you might be able to look up my name and find a story about my death. It happened at the entrance exam at UA a few months ago. Todoroki took out his phone and opened Hirogle. What's your name? Midoriya, Izuku. Izuku told Todoroki. Todoroki put his name in the search bar and several articles came up. Izuku knew that if anyone died at UA it would have gotten a few articles, but he wasn't expecting that many. The second article was the one with a photo of him. He was younger, first year of middle school. It was probably the only school photo the school had where he hadn't been given a black eye or something like that. Todoroki looked between the photo and the ghost before finally speaking. Fine, I believe you, but why are you at UA? Well, I was following Kaken Dash, Izuku began. Who is Kaken? Todoroki asked. Izuku thought for a moment. He could tell Todoroki about his connection to Kaken, but Todoroki could start talking to Kaken in order to confirm his identity. I'm not telling you, Izuku decided. Todoroki frowned. How about this? You promise not to ask any more questions about Kaken and I'll help you with the battle training, Izuku huffed. How? Todoroki asked, raising an eyebrow. I could help let you know about incoming attacks. Izuku smiled. I could also tell you about your opponent's quirks. Todoroki studied the ghost for a moment. Fine. Do you have any other questions? Izuku asked nervously. He really hoped Todoroki didn't. No, Todoroki replied and then stood up, leaving Izuku. Izuku looked towards the monitor only to see the villains victorious. Nana Shimura had many regrets. She regretted the haircut she had in high school. She regretted not going to her father's funeral. She regretted the last conversation she had with her late husband. She regretted leaving her children at such a young age. She regretted thinking she was strong enough to take down All for One. Two things she didn't regret was accepting One for All and passing the quirk down to Toshi. None of those wishes, hopes, dreams, and regrets mattered in Toshi's crumbling version of One for All. Nana remembers when she first arrived in what the first called the Void. She could clearly recall her late husband's face along with their two children's faces. She could list all of her close friends by name and birthday. She could even give mostly a crude description of what her childhood home had looked like. The Void itself was not crumbling, but instead reminded Nana of a cottage. It had a living room with a collection of various movies and TV shows on DVD that would apparently grow every time the quirk had been passed on. It has photos of people from each of the holders' past lives spread out around the cottage. It had a meeting-type room that had 8 chairs, each different and somewhat significant to one holder or another. It had a library filled with books about the different holders' lives. It almost felt like home to Nana. Then Toshi went up against All for One. Nana was afraid that Toshi wouldn't make it, that he would die taking One for All with him. However, something much worse happened. Toshi somehow subconsciously drew energy from the Void. After the fight, the once full cottage had lost its living room, all the photos but the ones that belonged to Toshi, and half the books in the library. The first, second, and third found it hard to recall their names. Nana could no longer picture the faces of her children. She thought that it was over. Then Toshi pushed himself to be something he could never be again. Slowly they lost everything but the 8 chairs. However, the chairs now resembled stone thrones. They sat in those chairs' thrones trying to hold onto whatever memories they had left. Then the 9th stone throne appeared. Toshi had picked a new holder and they could only wait for Toshi to transfer the quirk. Second was hopeful that with a new holder the void would be restored. So morale was at an all-time high since Toshi had gone toe-to-toe with All for One. The first thing Nana felt was a sense of being pulled. One moment she was in the crumbling void and the next she was sitting on a couch in a small apartment. She felt her memories return to her. It almost made her cry. The first, who Nana now remembers was named Yoichi Shigaraki, appeared next, followed by Daigoro Banjo, who was in turn followed by her former mentor En. She could see as each of them felt their memories return, how happy they were. Then there was a blinding white light. And then, nothing. All the other students had gone except for Todoroki, Ojiro, and Hagakure. Over the other battle, Izuku had learned all of the students' names and quirks. No one had seemed to notice Izuku, or if they had, no one had said anyone. Kaken wouldn't stop staring at him, which was a little weird, but Izuku tried not to think about that too much. On another note, Izuku would definitely have some choice words to use for whomever designed Hagakure's costume, or the lack of a design. Though it was a good idea to send a hero out into the world with only shoes and gloves. It wasn't like UA didn't have the technology to create a costume that would still be invisible to others. Either way, as the second to last battle came to a conclusion, Izuku felt increasingly nervous. What if he couldn't help Todoroki? He hated this being dead thing. He hated that the one thing he had wanted his whole life killed him. The whole thing made Izuku think of something Kaken had started to tell him back in elementary school. Ojiro and Hagakure made their way into the building and Izuku followed Todoroki to the planning area. So what's the plan? Izuku asked. I'll go in and freeze the ground. You'll be my lookout in case something happens, Todoroki said simply. Right? Izuku mumbled. Todoroki didn't really need Izuku's help. He was practically useless. The buzzer sounds and Todoroki goes in. Izuku follows behind. Izuku watched as the ice began to grow around Todoroki. It wasn't cold, which Izuku found interesting. Could he not feel a difference in temperature as a ghost? It made some sense sign he didn't have an actual body, but would he be able to trick himself into feeling warmer underneath a blanket or something? Todoroki counted down the hallways until they made it to where the bomb was most likely in. The strange thing was that only Hagakure was in the room. Yesh, Todoroki. Hagakure whined. You just had to freeze the whole building. Yes, it was the most logical play, Todoroki told Hagakure, who oddly smirked at his answer. What was dash? Izuku turned around to see Ojiro about to fall on top of Todoroki. Above you, Todoroki! Izuku shouted. Todoroki looked up and quickly shot up ice, freezing Ojiro to the ceiling. Ah! Hagakure frowned. We almost got you. Todoroki moved to touch the bomb, thus ending the battle. Hero team wins. All Might's voice crackled over the speakers. Now how about we start melting that ice? Nana felt herself slowly come back into existence. This time the former apartment looked like someone had put the whole thing into grayscale, even the former holders. Everything was in the place it was before with one new addition. Sat on the couch was a 4-year-old with curly green hair. He was the only one that had color. He stared at the TV, not blinking. It was almost unnerving. What the hell is going on? Banjo whispered. I don't know, Yoichi said, looking around their surroundings. Hey kid! En shouted at the 4-year-old sat on the couch. Where are we? Maybe he's a manifestation of the current holder, Nana offered. But he died. Yoichi muttered. We should have transferred back to 8. We should have. En asked, confused. Has this happened before? Yes, Yoichi frowned. Once, Shinomori tried to transfer the quirk to an up-and-coming vigilante, but they were killed by a villain before the transfer was complete. So is 9 not dead? En asked. No, I'm pretty sure he's dead, Yoichi said. Which doesn't explain why we're here still. Maybe it's because 8 destroyed the void so much, Banjo muttered. Or 9 was already connected with the quirk, Yoichi muttered before moving towards the bookcases on either side of the TV. We might need to start reading. So the former holders, now dead for a second time, began to pick up the books that contained the life story of one Izuku Midoriya. Had been working at the People Matter Hero Agency as an informational hero since Zei graduated from CI Academy 2 years ago and had been interning since the end of Zir first year. Had only ever met Jumper twice. Once when Jumper made Zem enroll in fencing classes and then again when she had gotten back to the agency at the start of M's shift. So when Jumper went missing, did feel like Zei could do anything to help. All Zei could do was watch as Zir employers stressed out about Jumper's disappearance, hoping that the cops or the HPSC find Jumper's corpse. However, with each passing day since she went missing, it was becoming more and more likely that Jumper would be coming home in a body bag. Upwards wasn't much better. He had been with the People Matter Hero Agency as a rescue hero about the same amount of time as M. However, unlike M, he was actually quite close with Jumper. So the day dragged on. With no leads in sight. Well, except for one. Jumper had gone missing the same day Izuku Midoriya died. Izuku wasn't sure what to do with this new friendship. With Todoroki. Todoroki didn't speak to him all that much after the battle trial, but he didn't not talk to him. It had also only been 2 days or so since the battle trial. It wasn't like Izuku had a phone, so it wasn't like the two of them could talk outside of class. And they couldn't really talk in class because it would seem like Todoroki was talking to himself. Maybe Izuku was overthinking this. On the other hand, Kaken was acting odd. He was looking at Izuku's old notebooks more and more often and researching ghost sightings of all things. Could it be related to the fact that Izuku was a ghost? Probably. But Izuku tried not to dwell on that too much. Also, Oboro had gone pretty much missing, or he was avoiding Izuku. Either one could be true since people would normally avoid him in middle school. Hopefully Oboro was fine. Right now 1A was voting on class president. Ida definitely looked the part, but that wasn't supposed to be a deciding factor. Izuku personally thought that Azui was a pretty good choice. During her battle trail, she came up with a plan and was able to make split-second decisions in order to ensure the success of the hero team. She was blunt and seemed to be a voice of reason. Yaoyorozu was also another good pick. She was very good at analyzing situations and coming up with plans. However, she wasn't the greatest at voicing her plans. During her battle trail, she at first let Shoji take the lead and only suggested her plan after the original plan failed. This led to the hero team, Kaminari and Jiro, winning and the villain team, Shoji and Yaoyorozu, losing. Her and Azui would make a good pair, and Ida should probably be added to the class's board since he was a stickler for the rules. Izuku could also see Kirishima as president or maybe vice. He had somehow managed to befriend almost everyone in the classes except for Todoroki, who hadn't spoken to anyone but Izuku, which would make him more likely to be able to understand the class's option on things that the president of vice would represent 1A in. Although Kaken was a bit of a natural-born leader, he didn't really take other people's personal options into consideration half the time. He mostly just did what he thought was the right thing. That might lead to some arguments later on in the year. I suggest we take a vote, Ida announced, causing Izuku to snap out of his analyst mode. Todoroki was giving him an odd look. Oh shit, he must have said all that out loud. Wouldn't everyone just vote for themselves? Siro frowned. Oh no, that wouldn't be a good thing. Maybe they should make it so no one can vote for themselves. What if we make it so no one can vote for themselves? Todoroki suggested. He really needs to stop mumbling. Thanks, Todoroki. Izuku smiled. He was glad Ha had someone to relay his suggestions to the living would, even if they would probably think it was all Todoroki's ideas. That might actually be a good idea, Yaoyorozu smiled. How about we do that? What about the class board? Azui asked. Should we also vote on that? How about we vote on president and whoever comes in second will be vice, Kirishima suggested. And then they get to pick the rest of the board after everyone else presents reason on why they should be on the board. Kaminari added. Dunce face and shitty hair have not sheet ideas, Kaken huffed. If Bakugo agrees with them, it can't be that bad of an idea, right? Mina asked. Just get this over with so I can start class, Aizawa huffed. The class fell silent and carefully considered their vote. After all, the president and vice would represent 1A and be put in charge when teachers were out for missions. They also had the ability to pick the board too. The main purpose for the board was to give hero students a sneak peek at what it looks like to run an agency or work for an agency. Only the hero course had a class board. Most classes had a president, vice, and maybe a secretary to give students notes that they missed. Izuku decided to go see who Todoroki was planning on voting for. "Who are you gonna vote for?" Izuku whispered to Todoroki. Todoroki slightly jumped and looked up. He frowned before pointing to the name he had written down. "Why?" Izuku asked curiously. Todoroki thought for a moment before pulling out a sticky note. "I know her." Todoroki wrote on the sticky note in neat handwriting. It was far neater than Izuku's had and would ever be. "How?" Izuku asked. He wasn't too surprised that the two recommended students knew one another, but Endeavor was notorious for keeping his family out of the public view. Todoroki frowned for a moment. "Tell you later," Todoroki wrote. It probably wasn't an explanation that was simple then. "How about at lunch?" Izuku smiled. He had been hanging out with Oboro in the teacher's lounge, but with Oboro missing he wasn't sure where to go. Now he could sit with Todoroki. That would be acceptable. Todoroki finished writing. Izuku smiled at it. But he was making another friend. Todoroki stood up to take his vote to the front of the class and Izuku made his way over to Kaken. Izuku peered over the blonde's shoulder to see he had written Kirishima. Izuku wondered who was going to count all the votes. Eventually everyone had gone up to the box and put in their vote. Shoji ended up counting the votes, since he apparently didn't want the possession even if he was elected. 6. 7. Todoroki. Ida. Kirishima 3. 32. "Congratulations, Azui," Ida said with an almost stranded smile. "It's Tsu," Tsu frowned. "I guess that means Yaozu is vice," Kaminari shrugged. "Right?" Yaozu stood up nervously. "Well, we should probably pick the board now. Does anyone have a certain role they want?" Tsu said with a rib bit. Me. Ashido practically shouted. "I want to run our social media accounts. It's a good idea as future heroes to have an account for the class." "All right then, Ashido will be the PR," Yaozu decided. "Anyone else?" "Monoma should be the secretary," Kaminari snickered. "Okay, then Monoma will be the secretary," Tsu riveted. "Sounds like a fun job," Monoma shrugged. "Ida should be the treasurer." Uraraka beamed. "I don't see why not," Yaozu said. "I think that's all the board spaces we need to fill until next year." Finally, Aizawa huffed before beginning class. Oboro wasn't sure where he was. All he knew was that he had only been here a few times before and he had only been here for a day. When he first regained consciousness from dying, he had been trapped in this places for at least 2 years. The next time he was trapped it only lasted 6 months. Then for the next 5 to 6 years, he returned to the place every few months for no more than a few days at a time. Luckily he hadn't been back since his 10th death anniversary. He had hoped whatever was dragging him back to this place had finally given up on dragging him here, but here he was 3 years later back in this place. The place he was in was a plain-looking room with an operating table. He couldn't tell you what was on the table. Anytime he tried to look at the table, he could get a split headache. It was almost like his mind wouldn't let him look at the table. He wasn't alone in the room either. There was always a short man with large green goggles glasses and a mustache in the room. He was normally focused on whatever was on the table. Sometimes there was a faceless man that would join Mustache Man. Faceless man would sit and watch Mustache Man work. One time many years ago Oboro appeared in the room and there was no table. However, there was a small child with light blue hair, Faceless Man, Mustache Man, and a tall Smoke Man. The Smoke Man felt familiar to Oboro. Yet he could never place why. "This is your new caretaker," the Faceless Man told the child. "It will take care of you while I am away." "Shouldn't we use it for more dash?" Mustache Man started. He seemed angry, like his collector's figurines were being given to a child to play with. "No," the Faceless Man spoke, causing everyone in the room but Smoke Man to flinch. "Yes, sir," Mustache Man stumbled to reply. "Now, do you like it?" the Faceless Male asked the child. "Yes," the child replied in a small voice. "I like him very much." The Faceless Man studied the child. It was the first and last time he had ever seen Smoke Man and the child. Oboro this time found himself back in the room, but this time the only person in the room was Smoke Man. Smoke Man was staring at the table. Oboro could now see the table. It was covered in a few places with dried blood, and had a few medical tolls neatly organized on a tray on the table. Smoke Man was just staring at the table. It was hard to say what the exact expression that was on Smoke Man's face since Smoke Man only had two smoke-like yellow eyes, but he looked horrified. Then Mustache Man came into the room. "Oh good," Mustache Man smiled. "You're already here." "Why?" Smoke Man asked, turning to Mustache Man. "Sensei had a few changes he wanted to make," Mustache Man explained. "No," Smoke Man shook his head. "Why did you make me?" This took Oboro by surprise. What did Smoke Man mean by make him? Were they related? "Because I could," Mustache Man settled on. "Now, hop up onto the table." Smoke Man was hesitant, but he did as he was asked. "Will it hurt?" Smoke Man asked, laying down on the table. "Yes," Mustache Man told him. "But you won't remember a thing." With that, the sick man went to work. This time Oboro could see what happened on the table. He could hear the screams. He could only watch as Mustache Man cut into Smoke Man's skull. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when the smoke cleared and revealed Oboro's corpse. Shoto wasn't sure why he had told Izuku he was going to explain how he knew Yaoyorozu at lunch. Maybe he had been secretly hoping someone would notice the bruise and take him away. Maybe he was glad that he had someone to fill the moments of silence that made him feel so uneasy. Whatever the reason was, he didn't really care. He liked listening to Izuku mumble about one thing or another. It helped him drown out the loud sounds of the lunchroom. "So, how do you know Yaoyorozu?" Izuku asked. "I used to get dragged to pro-hero conferences with my father," Shoto started. Yaoyorozu would sometimes come with her uncle. Ida was normally there too. "Which hero is Yaoyorozu's uncle?" Izuku asked. He was mumbling a list of pro-hero that it could possibly be. Oh, this would be fun. Maybe Izuku would be able to help him on his theories. He already was half sure their homeroom teacher was married to Present Mike, since he fit the subtle description that Present Mike had hinted at over the years. "Source," Shoto said plainly. This made Izuku start muttering about the similarities between Source and Yaoyorozu's quirk and a possibility that the two were related to the pro-hero matter. It was interesting to hear the similarities and interworkings of a quirk. Shoto bet if Izuku was still in fact alive, he might have made a very good informational hero like Nizu or Sir Night-Eye. "Hey Todoroki?" Shoto looked up from his lunch to see Izuku pointing to two students from his class coming over to sit with him. Minute. He hated talking to his fellow classmates. Hopefully they just planned on asking a simple question about a lesson or an assignment and then leave him alone. "Todoroki, are you talking to yourself?" Sue asked as she and Monoma slid into the seats across from me. "No," Shoto said. He was talking to Izuku, of course. Well, technically Izuku was talking to him, and he mostly nodding his head and adding his thoughts every so often. "Then who are you talking to?" Monoma scowled. "Izuku," Shoto said plainly. Hopefully they would leave now that he had answered their questions. However, he was wrong. "Who is Izuku?" Sue asked with a small ribbit. "The ghost that is haunting our class," Shoto said before taking another bite of his soba. "Todoroki!" Izuku gasped. "You can't just say that." "And I'm All Might," Monoma said, rolling his eyes. "You're All Might?" Shoto asked, confused. All Might last he checked was in his 40s, not a 15-year-old. "I was being sarcastic," Monoma huffed. "Oh," Shoto frowned. "Wait, what do you mean dash?" Sue started to ask when she was interrupted by a loud blaring sound. The loud sound made Shoto flinch. He hoped no one noticed. "What the hell is that?" Monoma muttered. "It's intruder alert," a second-year student shouted. "We gotta evacuate." Before Shoto knew what was happening, he was being rushed out of the cafeteria and trampled by upperclassmen. Then the lights started flicking. Shoto looked up to find Izuku messing with the lights. He was floating. Had Shoto ever seen a ghost float? Was this something they all could do, or was Izuku's quirk float? "What are you doing?" Shoto asked, which got him odd looks from several students. Izuku quickly pointed to the window. It looked like the press had broken thought the gate. They weren't being attacked by villains. The press had just gotten through the gate. Apparently he had been speaking all of this out loud, or his fellow students were mindbenders, because a lot of the students around him had stopped pushing and shoving in the hall and were now all looking at the gates. How did Monoma started, a look of confusion crossing his face before he shut his mouth. Eventually a teacher came out into the hallway and made everyone head back to class. Tsuyu had her fair share of crazy. From the strange boy in her homeroom class a few years ago that insisted that Nizu was from another universe, to her crazy grandmother that said they were living in a fanfic posted on something called AO3. She had never once believed any of them. That was until Todoroki. Todoroki was a bit of an oddball in her class. He was the only one who didn't speak unless spoken to. He was the only one who never seemed to get pop culture reference, or sarcasm for that matter. And he talked to himself. Monoma had decided that today was the day to ask Todoroki about it. Despite her attempts to get him to mind his own business and them getting interrupted by the press break-in, he dragged her over to Todoroki's desk. Explain. Now. Monoma insisted on pulling up a chair to Todoroki's desk. What? Todoroki asked, almost tilting his head like a puppy. You know, Monoma started before Tsuyu decided to interrupt. Who were you talking to? Tsuyu asked bluntly. Izuku the ghost? Todoroki told her warily. How can you talk to ghost? Tsuyu asked carefully. Not you too. Monoma shouted. Ghosts aren't real. Yes they are, Todoroki frowned. Calm down Monoma, Tsuyu said with a rib bit. Now, how come you can see ghosts and we can't? Only people who have had near-death experiences at a young age can see ghosts, Todoroki said blankly. Tsuyu could feel her big sis instinct kick in. Everything made more sense. Todoroki's odd behavior. The flinching. The scar. Tsuyu looked over to see Monoma having a similar expression. Saying that ghosts are real. Could you pull up an article about this, Izuku? Monoma asked. Sure. Todoroki then took out his phone and quickly handed it over. The article was about a boy Tsuyu had heard about a while ago. Izuku Midoriya. Do you want him to pick something up? Tsuyu and Monoma looked up from the article. Huh? Oh, to prove that he was a real ghost and Todoroki wasn't making it up. Sure, Tsuyu smiled. She was expecting a pencil to be picked up or something. Instead the ghost picked up Monoma. Oh, that's cold. Monoma shouted, causing the whole class to turn towards the three. Well, at least now they know Todoroki wasn't crazy. Mina had been given the task of setting up as social media accounts. So of course she took that to mean she could post all about the drama of 1A, with the exception of the really personal drama OFC. Future hero drama. At ###. This is Mina here from class 1A. Big hello for UA. #heroes, #future heroes, #UA, #1. Future hero drama. At ###. Replying to at her class off ###. Holy shit, we're getting attacked? #1A, #UA, #villain attack? Future hero drama. At ###. Replying to at her class off ###. Oop, false alarm, get it? Just the press breaking in. Like FR stop, we're trying to learn. #1A, #UA, the press, #thufwisconity. Future hero drama. At ###. Replying to at her class off ###. Guys, we have a ghost. Image off monomagetting pick it up Izuku.png. #1A, #UA, #ghost, #who you gonna call, #homeroom teacher Soden was #ghost hunters chapter text. People of the internet? So a while ago, like 7 to 8 months ago, I planned out this FIC and then got to writing it, but I didn't have everything planned out, and in writing I have run into a few issues. I'm not discontinuing the FIC, I'm just taking a break to fix some things and also get used to my new school. I recently changed schools. I should be back to a regular posting schedule by the new year. Thanks for the understanding and patience. Redacted. So my last actual chapter was posted back in September of last year, like 8 months ago, and I have determined that I will not be returning to this FIC. The MHA fandom is just not something I've interacted with for a really long time, and I don't have the inspiration or motivation to continue with this story. I am so sorry. This is the end of an era for me, and I didn't want to leave you all with nothing, so here was my plan for this FIC and where it was going. If you wish to write something similar to this FIC, that's amazing, and I'm sure you'll take it farther than I can. Something I love about this website is the majority of it is taking someone else's idea and growing it or creating new things from it. So thank you for reading. I love you all. Goodbye. So from where we left off, the Oboro came to. Aizawa jumps into action. Oboro freaks out and runs after Aizawa, laughing face. Izuku follows Oboro. Izuku floats, apparently that not normal. Oboro kind of freaks out. Izuku somehow uses black-green strings to hold back the Nomu. Oboro might died, Aegean, from a heart attack. Aizawa notices somethings. All Might shows up. Normal canon fight. Oboro helps students get Aizawa out of there. Heroes show up. Izuku gets Shoto to hold Kirishima back from All Might. Izuku goes to find Kaken. Bakugo is unharmed. Bakugo and Kirishima have a chat hangout. Izuku tags along. Back to you at Oboro is upsetty spaghetti with Aizawa. Shoto and Izuku have a chat. Aizawa is now staring at Izuku. Oboro doesn't think he can see Ghost, but the whole thing is weird. Minoma, Tsu, Todoroki, and Izuku are a friend group now. Tsu dubs Izuku an unofficially member of 1A. Izuku reveals that he was accepted into UA, but died. Todoroki relays this info. Minoma and Tsu are sympathetic. I know, right, Minoma being human? Sports festival is announced. Izuku watches people train and writes down notes. Slowly the notes start getting left at students' desks signed Your Classroom Ghost. People of 1A start to get creeped out. Ghost Gang is unaffected by the development. Minoma is very happy that Izuku can do quirk notes. Mina makes a post. Kurt. Aizawa is acting weird. Sports festival arrives. Izuku and Oboro watch in the announcer booth. Aizawa is looking at Izuku. Normal canon stuff. Shoto gets first. Present Mike leaves to go get some snacks. Aizawa confronts Izuku. Izuku is surprised. Aizawa can see the floating orb souls, not the actual soul. Can also hear what they say. Izuku explains some stuff. Aizawa, though, he was going crazy since he was hearing Oboro's voice. Present Mike comes back. Culverly battle begins. Canon Bakugo team. Shoto, Minoma, Hatsum, and Momo. Ida, Uraraka, Tokoyami, and Denki. Canon Shinso team. Places. 1 Todoroki. 2 Endi Bakugo. 3 Ardita. For Shinso. Canon dropouts. Minoma vs Shinso. Shinso drops out on purpose since he wants to go underground. They make a deal. Minoma and him make it look like the two are fighting their hardest. Shiro vs Todoroki. Izuku notices that Todoroki is upset and his quirk is hurting him. Izuku decides to go check on him. Oboro gives him a sad knowing look. Izuku and Todoroki have a chat. Canon stuff is revealed. Izuku gives the whole "It's your power" speech. Vine Girl vs Kaminari, canon. Hatsum vs Ida, canon. Aoyama vs Mina, canon. Momo vs Tokai. Momo wins cause she a boss and Izuku gave tips. Kirishima vs Tetis. Kirishima wins cause Izuku gave tips. Bakugo vs Uraraka, canon. Izuku is very invested. Minoma vs Todoroki. Minoma is surprised by Todoroki true quirk. Todoroki is slightly traumatized. Todoroki remembers Izuku words. He uses his own fire winning. Vine Girl vs Ida, canon. Mina vs Momo. Momo wins obvious. Kirishima vs Bakugo, canon. Todoroki vs Ida, canon. Momo vs Bakugo. Very close but canon. Todoroki vs Bakugo. Todoroki uses his fire. Bakugo beats him. First Bakugo. Second Todoroki. Third Ida and Momo. Ida's brother is still attacked. Bakugo isn't chained up. Shigi check-in. Canon stain things. Fei check-in. The castle crumbs slower. Izuku hangs out with Kaken. Bakugo and Kirishima are on a date. Izuku doesn't know. They do couples things. At the end they kiss. Izuku is kinda horrified shocked. He decides to go back to UA early. Tezawa is there and he's all better now. Oboro and Izuku go haunt some classrooms. The gremlins are back. Izuku sits in Grape's chair. Everyone starts looking in Grape's chair cause there's a floating pencil and notebook. At first it's thought to be Hagakure. Hagakure comes into class late. Everyone is slightly freaked out. Ghost Gang isn't though. Hero names. Izuku and Oboro decide to mess with the stupid names and put their own suggestions. Alien Queen is approved by the ghosts of the class much to Midnight's surprise and confusion. Shoto's name is flagged. Shoto is upset by this. Midnight agrees. Oboro and Izuku start brainstorming hero names. They decide on Korihi. For Shoto, Icefire. Shoto approves and so does Midnight, passing out of internships. Izuku tries to get Ida to pick a different internship. Uraraka gets worried. Monoma goes with Pro Hero, Matter. See for more info about them. https docs.google.com document D1GZ3GPDIJHDJB2YQ7LESL BM17I Hertz U90I VIF57BI edit hashtag heading H.83 Kjuvliak. Monoma wants to add someone to the Ghost Gang. Tsu is okay with that. Shoto is fine. Izuku wants to know who first. Shinso arrives. Shinso is skeptical about the ghost thing. Izuku offers to write a quirk analysis about Shinso's quirk in front of him. Shinso agrees. Izuku grabs some pencils and his notebook. Shinso is added to Ghost Gang. Shinso is caught up on all things Izuku. Monoma comments on Todoroki's use of fire. Shoto explains that Izuku had him talk to. Everyone shook. Inko and All Might date Carrot v Carrot. Izuku decides to follow Shoto to get a vibe on Trash Can Man. Boro approves. Shoto is not completely okay with it. Ida goes off on his own dumbass self. Monoma is nervous cause the Matter Agency is his favorite. Shinso is so jealous that Monoma gets go to ditch our Matter Agency. Tsu smells love in the air. Todoroki is confused. Todoroki goes to meet up with his father. Trash Can Man us and but. Endeavor is training, Reed abusing, Shoto. Burnham is great. Izuku is concerned. Swap to Monoma. Monoma meets the PMA. M is very distant and quiet. Matter is their amazing self of course. Is so glad to meet a fan. Monoma may explode. Matter talks about how each hero has something to teach him and he will have to come back for the next internship or for an extended one. Matter gets him first. Matter shows the importance of using and understanding your resources, making Monoma think about what he could do to help him become his best hero. Matter decides they will go to Hosu. M doesn't like that idea. Back to Todoroki. Izuku tries to convince Todoroki that the training is abuse. Todoroki is in denial and tries to push it off as normal. Izuku gets really frustrated and decides to talk a walk. Izuku runs into Monoma. Matter and Monoma are on patrol. Izuku decides to follow them. Nomus. Matter gives Monoma permission to fight. Monoma copies their quirk. Monoma and Matter make their way through the city. Izuku notices Ida in an ally. He pulls Monoma with his quirk to look at the ally. Monoma knows it's Izuku. Matter gets caught up in a fight. Monoma goes to take action. Stain is upset Thai spaghetti. Izuku takes Ida's phone out and texts the class group that and signs the text 1A Ghost. Swap to Shoto POV. Shoto gets the text. The text also says to get permission from the hero before going to the sent location. Shoto gets permission. Endeavor thinks he's going for a Nomu. Shoto runs to get to the ally asking for backup on the way. Shoto arrives. Izuku holds back Stain. Monoma is on the floor paralyzed. Ida and Native are both paralyzed and confused as to why Stain is standing still. Shoto talks to Izuku directly getting quirk info. Ida and Native are more confused. So Shoto frees Stain in place. Izuku holds the man back. Monoma unfreezes and uses Matter's quirk to complete freeze Stain in place. Izuku lets go of Stain. Ida and Native are so confused right now. One of Monoma's timers runs out and Stain is released. Back to fighting. Monoma copies Shoto's quirk. Izuku tries to use the strings again but Stain breaks free knowing what to expect now. Monoma and Todoroki fight Stain for an epic battle. Ida unfrees for the last part. Stain is caught again. Ida remembers to tie him up. Pros show up. Matter is proud. Ida is still confused, but in trouble. Native is confused. Endeavor is mad. Noma tries to grab at Izuku. Shoto starts to panic but then remembers Izuku is a ghost. Nomu is grabbing at air and confusing many. Endeavor burns it to a crisp. Hospital. Shoto, Monoma, and Ida are all put into the same room. Ida asks some questions. Todoroki asks if Izuku is okay with giving out the answers. Izuku is fine with it. Todoroki and Monoma explain. Ida is actually really cool with it. Ida formally introduces himself to Izuku. Todoroki is the go-between. Shigaraki check-in. We meet the rest of Elu. Back to the heroes. Cop comes in. Todoroki and Monoma can take credit. Ida is left out and required to take extra classes on the effects of vigilantism. Izuku laughs cause vigilantism was his plan B. Todoroki relays this info after the cop leaves. Back to school. Oboro decides to give Izuku assignments. Izuku is very happy about this. Izuku thinks Kaken's new hairstyle is funny. Todoroki has a theory. Canon chat about internships. Ghost is brought up. Izuku decides to freak the class out and write on the board to confirm some things. Question that are asked. Who is Ghost with? What is Ghost's name? Is Ghost friendly? Why is Ghost helping the class? Aizawa allows the Ghost thing to continue and Ghost Gang finds it funny. Ida tries to say something but Shoto tells him not to. The class decides that Ghost is now officially in their class and takes the open seat. Izuku can now write things more publicly. Bakugo is freaked out. Inko and Yagi date. Izuku decided to follow his mom for a bit since she seems more. Izuku worldview collapse as they kiss. Rescue training race. Group 1. Monoma, Mina, Ida, Ojiro, and Shiro. Shiro wins like in canon. Monoma takes second showing his improvement, copies Todoroki's quirk. Group 2. Bakugo, Kirishima, Kaminari, Tsuyu, and Jiro. Bakugo wins. Todoroki asks if Kaken was in that group. Izuku is taken aback by the question and responds truthfully. Group 3. Momo, Hagakure, Shoji, Koda, and Uraraka. Momo wins character. Izuku takes notes. Mina suggests that they let the Ghost participate in the last race. Sue suggests that Momo make a small whiteboard for the Ghost to respond. Todoroki starts to say they don't have to do that. Monoma interrupts him OFC. Izuku responds by explaining that he would love to but he is updating their quirk analysts. The class talks about this for a sec. All Might is concerned and asks for explanations. Izuku makes comment on how AM is dating his mom. Todoroki is super taken aback by this. Group 4. Todoroki, Tokoyami, Sato, and Aoyama. Todoroki wins. Teacher meeting on pairs for the final. All Might mention the Ghost thing. Nizu notes that ghosts are real. Everyone but Aizawa and Present Mike are taken aback by this. Vlad calls Cap. Mike reveals that Aizawa could see glowing orbs and could hear them talk after he woke up and they only just now went away. Staff is taken aback. Back on topic? Midnight suggested they let the odd one out be pair with the Ghost for sheets and giggles. Todoroki reveals his secret love child theory. Sue wants to go back to the fact that Izuku's mom is dating M. Monoma discotheque theory with evidence. Shinso is surprised that Monoma is an All Might fan. Sue, can we go back to the AM is dating Izuku's mom? Shinso also argues that Izuku could be older. Todoroki reveals an age and says one night stand. Sue is surprised Todoroki knows that term. Todoroki tells everyone to stop talking since Izuku just walked up. Izuku is suspicious of them face with raised brow. Final exams. Oboro make Izuku do quirk analysis on Aizawa and Present Mike. He also wants an analysis on 1's performance in their practical exams. Sato and Kirishima vs. Cementos. Canon fail. Tsu and Tokoyami vs. Ectoplasm. Canon pass. Ida and Ojiro vs. Power Loader. Canon pass. Yaoyorozu and Mina vs. Eraserhead. Mina works well with people. Yaoyorozu gets more confident. Uraraka and Aoyama vs 13. Cannon pass. Aoyama says Ida not Midoriya. Kaminari and Shiro vs Nizu. Shiro is a dumbass too, straight face. Koda and Jiro vs Present Mike. Cannon pass. Hagakure and Shoji vs Snipe. Cannon pass. Monoma vs Midnight. Monoma uses Todoroki quirk. People be confused. Monoma reveals that he has a lock of Todoroki's hair. Todoroki gave it to him OFC. Pass. Bakugo and Todoroki vs All Might. Bakugo goes off on his own. Todoroki tries to follow. All Might sneak attacks them. Both of them won't work together. Izuku decides to go against Oboro's requests and goes into the match. Izuku tells Todoroki he needs to work together with his partner. All Might attacks again and pins Bakugo down. Todoroki causes a distraction and saves Bakugo. They run off to an building away from All Might. Todoroki says that they need to come up with something of a plan so they can at least coordinate their attacks. Bakugo starts to say he doesn't want to run. Then he's taken aback. Bakugo agrees to make a plan. Todoroki asks if Bakugo is fire resistant. Bakugo can withstand up to 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Plan is formed. All Might is surrounded by a ring of fire. He can't see Jack. Bakugo attacks first. Then Todoroki. Then Bakugo again. The Bakugo and Todoroki. They put the handcuffs on him. Pass. Izuku reviews results and gives his findings to Oboro. Back to class. Aizawa reveals that Sato, Kirishima, Kaminari, and Shiro all failed. Logical ruse revealed. They get the camp pamphlet. Hagakure suggested they go to the mall to pick up whatever anyone is missing. Kirishima and Bakugo had a date planned. Date is moved to Kiyoshi Ward. Todoroki was planning on going to see his mother. Izuku asks to go with him since he doesn't really have anything to do. Todoroki agrees. League check-in. We meet Dabi and Toga. Shigi is in a bad mood. Kurogiri suggested that he go out for a walk. Shigaraki kidnaps Monoma. Monoma can talk like his life depends on it. But he can also bite. Shigaraki decided to leave seeds of doubt and then leaves. Monoma already doesn't trust Hero Society, so it doesn't work. Back to Deku. Mama Ray can see Ghost. She thought she was crazy. They have a small chat about books. Todoroki doesn't really read books cause flaming trash can. Ray likes Midoriya. Midoriya offers to bring her books. Todoroki asks to get reading suggestion. Midoriya and Ray have lists. Yagi and Inko have a date. Izuku decided to follow Tsu around after getting her address. He has a whiteboard. Tsu suggested he get a phone with text-to-speech. Izuku has an idea. Tsu's joke. Tsu gets invited to the pool thing. Izuku comes too. Izuku sits by the side of the pool near where the girls are playing volleyball and hanging out. The boys are racing. Tsu reveals at the pool thing that Ghost want to get a phone so he can use text-to-speech and have people's numbers. Momo offers to buy him one. Izuku is happy. The girls want to know if he is going with them on the camping trip. He wants to give out quirk analysis again. Uraraka want to know his name. Izuku agrees to tell as long as they don't tell anyone else. They ask what? Izuku explains that he doesn't want to freak out Kaken. They want to know who Kaken is. Izuku refuses to say. Izuku also asks that they still call him Ghost. Izuku reveals info. Uraraka is shocked. Uraraka explains why she knows the name. Mina is super surprised. Izuku explains that it wasn't her fault and if he had used his quirk any other time it would have had the same results. Uraraka thanks Jim for saving her. Aizawa shows up and tells people to go home. PM check-in. Hints at what's going on in the story with Jumper. Back to you. People wait to leave for the camp. Izuku stuffs Todoroki's bag with extra notebooks and stuff. Momo has Izuku's phone. Izuku sets it up and gets added to the 1A group chat. Group chat shenanigans. He names himself Ghost. They get to the summer camp. Wild PP cats revealed. Izuku follows the WWPC back to camp. One makes a comment on the flying phone. Izuku decides to stuff his phone with Todoroki's stuff. Izuku follows Koda around and helps with dinner. WWPC are shook. 1B says it's the 1A ghost. Izuku decides to confirm it. Shinso finds the whole thing funny. 1A arrives. Dinner. Izuku decides to sit out of the pool. This time Monoma uses Bakugo's quirk as a joke that then scares Koda and he falls off the wall. Izuku catches him. The boys be silent. Todoroki is confused and then remembers. Koda is taken to an adult. WWPC be shook again. Someone says it has to be Hagakure. Izuku leaves to find Todoroki's bag. Izuku gets him phone and then walks over the girls' room. Izuku asks to hang out with them since he doesn't want to accidentally freak out Kaken. Girls play truth or dare. Things that are revealed. Uraraka has a crush on Ida. Hagakure has a boyfriend outside of class. Siu is Eroes. Mina was picked on in school cause of her appearance. Jiro's parents are actually big-time musicians. Izuku's mom is dating All Might. Momo knew Todoroki from a young age and at one point there was talk of an arranged marriage. Kaken is Bakugo Katsuki and they knew each other as kids. Momo has a crush on a girl, but won't say who. Siu and Momo use she-they. Everyone else uses she-her. Izuku uses he-him. Jiro writes songs in her free time. Izuku is a late bloomer and first time he used his quirk he died. Izuku is their age. Izuku actually was accepted into UA. Todoroki can see Izuku. Sleep. Training. Izuku gives tips with text-to-speech app. WWPC and 1B and Vlad are concerned. IB gets advice too. Poboro and Izuku work on ghost things. It's revealed that Izuku has 3 abilities. He can float, create black strings and create smoke screens. Livings can see these things, according to Uraraka. Dinner. Izuku brings some to Koda. Koda is really surprised to see a floating plate. Izuku uses a phone to explain. Izuku has sleeps in girls' room again. They play Uno. Momo brought it. Kasensus. Carrot. Sleep time. Sleepy face. Next day. More quirk suggestions. 1B just accepts it. WWPC is creeped out. Vlad thinks it's Hagakure. Uraraka helps on the floating part. Todoroki explains where he is in the room. Dinner. After dinner, test of courage is announced. 1B asks if the ghost would be willing to help them. Monoma demands ghost joins him. Izuku decides to go with Monoma since he's all by himself. WWPC accept the weird sheet. Things be canon. Danger sense goes off. Izuku runs off without telling anyone, handing his phone to Monoma. Izuku saves Koda. Koda is so confused. Koda gets carried back to camp. Izuku gives Koda to Aizawa and then runs off to find Todoroki. Izuku finds Todoroki and helps out a bit by leading Dark Shadow to Moonfish. Dark Shadow can see Izuku eyes. They group up and start walking back to camp. Bakugo and Todoroki go poof. Group notices after running into Uraraka and Tsu. Izuku taps Tsu on her shoulder. Tsu hands Izuku her phone after unlocking it. Izuku explains some things. Compress shows up. Canon things. Todoroki is released much to Dabi's disappointment. Dabi and Toga mistake Izuku for a real person. Kaken be took and the jig is up since the whole forest heard him yell Kaken as he slipped through the portal. Bakugo wakes up with the League. He heard Izuku shouting his name and is haunted by it. Toga asks who the green-haired kid was. League goes back and forth over if there was a green kid. Dabi and Toga are confused. Back to hospital. Kirishima gets a group together. Izuku asks Todoroki, Tsu, Monoma, and Shinso to go. Todoroki and Monoma agree. Shinso doesn't want to give his parents a heart attack since he was just attacked by villains. Tsu thinks it's stupid, but agrees to go. Team Save Bakugo is Kirishima, Ida, Todoroki, Monoma, Momo, and Izuku. Izuku explains things with Bakugo. Izuku tells Kirishima he and Kaken are cute together. Group gets disguises. They then go to the spot. The faux POV. Canon everything but Monoma copies Ida's quirk. Thafo is happy about the whole thing. Carrot v carrot. Inside of OFA as it crumbles to the ground, having fulfilled its purpose. Izuku stays with Bakugo. Bakugo goes through the motions. They finally 2 days later get to Kaken home. Inko is back to living on her own with Yagi. Kaken goes to his room and pulls out an old chalkboard easel. Kaken demands answers. Izuku gives them. Kaken takes it better. Week later dorm talk. For days later they move into the dorms. Bakugo brings stuff for Izuku. Everyone is confused at first but the all is explained. Izuku's room has a lot of notebooks and books both fiction and on quirk theory. He has a lot of mini whiteboard and markers. Todoroki helps paint his room so his walls are chalkboard stuff. Dorm room contest. Izuku participants too. Kaken goes to bed early. Kirishima sneaks off winking face. Oboro goes to talk with Izuku. Oboro reveals that Aizawa can no longer see the ghosts. They chat about things. Back to class. Monoma and Shinso are a thing now. They are about to be poly with Denki in a bit. Tokoyami now sits with Ghost Gang since Dark Shadow wanted to. Training. School festival is cancelled but internships revealed. Big three show up. Canon picks but Monoma goes to PM. Bakugo goes back to Best Jeanist. Todoroki to Sir Night Eye per Mirio's request. Big three ask about Ghost. Ghost is made known. Izuku decides to follow Todoroki. Sir and Izuku met again. Todoroki senses tension. Sir don't like to do, he thinks he's like Endeavor. Sir takes to do cause Izuku stamps the form. Canon thinks. Eri can see Izuku. Mirio issued. Later to do explains. Swap to Kirishima to see Canon things. Big meeting. Canon with to do spin. Day of raid. Canon. Todoroki versus Overhaul. Todoroki unlocks blue fire, which burns him. Eri fix. Izuku leads helping hand. Sir dies. Sir gets Esirafai mouth eye. Visiting Eri. Eri says something like, you know what that's like. Aizawa is concerned. Izuku decides to stay with Eri for the week. They watch movies in color and do kid stuff. Hospital staff is concerned. Aizawa suggested it's another quirk. Aizawa takes Eri home. Izuku shook. Izuku joins people at lunch. Todoroki starts to talk about Villain Day. Villain Day is explained. Izuku offers to help come up with backstories. Izuku doesn't want to participate. When he does stuff, Izuku helps. The whole class now calls him Izuku. Izuku helps 1B2. Some others from 2B and 3 and become asking for advice from Ghost. Villain Day arrives. He watches it with Eri. Everyone had broken off into factions or groups, some solo. The goal is to be the last one standing. Ghost Gang wins with his plan. It's a 6-hour thing. Villain POV at halftime. It's revealed that they are planning an attack on UA. Ghost Gang wins. Eri loved it. Izuku and Eri time. Izuku gets Eri to ask if they can go over to the 1A dorms. Aizawa was going there anyways. Aizawa pulls Kaminari and Mina to talk grades. Oyama is a nervous wreck for some reason. Villains. Fight breaks out and Kitchen is crushed. They take Eri captive. Eri starts to freak and her quirk activates. Twice drops her and they get away. Eri is having a panic attack. No one knows what to do. Monoma goes to get Aizawa. Izuku runs to her to calm her down. Izuku gets rewound. Aizawa finally comes and turns her quirk off, leaving one Izuku naked. Izuku. Cliffhanger OFC. Izuku ends up passing out. Izuku wakes up in OFA. Users left. Nana. First. Faded danger Senskai. Yagi, sorta. Meeting and things are explained. The strength is gone but the quirks are there. Izuku wakes up. Momo made Izuku some clothes. Bakugo loses his sheet. Kirishima is calming him down. Izuku meets 1A officially. Aoyama is nowhere to be seen. All Might is on a date with Inko when he feels OFA return. Swap to AFO in prison feeling his brother return. UA staff meeting. It's decided that since Izuku has been in class with them the whole time, he gets to take a test, review all the content they've gone over. If he passes, he can join the class. Aoyama breaks down and spills his guts to Tokoyami. Yeah, they're friends. Inko is informed. Inko-Izuku reunion. Inko starts to tell Izuku about Yagi. Izuku already knows. Izuku reunion. Izuku takes a test. He passes. First day take 2. Aoyama goes poof. Izuku sits at lunch with the Ghost Gang like normal. Tsu asks about his quirk. Izuku decides to lead with he has ghost powers and can still see ghosts. Ghost gang like that Izuku can be seen now. Izuku asks they continue calling him Izuku. Joint training session. Kennen but no Aoyama. Minoma swaps for Mineta. Shinso swaps for Minoma. No extra student. Dorm movie night. Tadaka hints. Finals. For the practical portion they have to present a signature move and use it to defeat ectoplasm. Inko and Izuku bonding. Ghost gang outing. Izuku visits Rei with more books. Eri is babysat by Izuku. Eri and Izuku have a conversation. Back to dorms and school. Movie board game night. Board games stop after Bakugo blows up the Monopoly board sad face. Aoyama is out of the class, but Shinso is transferred in. No one knows what happened to Aoyama. Tokoyami confessed what happened. 2A is stunned. Shinso, Minoma, and Kaminari became a thing over break. They watch Brave since Todoroki hasn't seen it. Ida makes them go to sleep, sad face. They actually go to the opening ceremony? A sheet villains attack. 2A we do this sheet like 8 times a week, straight face. Compress is taken captive yay. Re-election for class councils. Mono is voted president. Tiu is voted vice. Izuku is voted secretary. Ida is voted treasurer. Mina is voted PR officer. Mina has been making post-OFC. Eri comes over for dinner. It's revealed the Shinso is Eri's adopted sister. Izuku silently puts things together. You say. The training exercises. No villains. Hints. Momo and Jiro are oddly close. Izuku and Tsu think they're dating carrot v carrot. Todoroki has a love child theory for Jiro and Shinso. He's actually correct? All Might and Izuku have a chat about OFA. 2-week training. Izuku still helps out with quirk training. The class helps with danger sense. Bakugo gets to throw cabbages at Izuku. Why cabbages? 'Cause I say so. Sparkles to do hin sparkles. Tsu, Shinso, and Minoma. Person facepalming. Izuku and Uraraka have a chat. Lots of trauma to unpack there. Uraraka is added to Ghost Gang. Ghost Gang. Todoroki, Shinso, Minoma, Tsu, Izuku, and Shinso gets to experiment with his quirk. Sports festival. Round 1. All-out dodgeball battle. Anything is allowed as long as you get at least one person out. Last people standing after 15 minutes move on. Ghost Gang teams up. Some of the lower classes decided to drop out. Minoma copies Todoroki's quirk. They are defense. Izuku is mobility, he can lift people too. Plus danger sense. Tsu and Shinso get people out. Shinso brainwashes a group and people throw the ball. Tsu is long distance. Minoma is hit. Minoma makes it as dramatic as possible, straight face. 15 minutes is up. 35 people remain. 2-round, relay race. 5 people per team, 6 teams. Top 3 teams move on plus 1 person from the 4th. Ghost Gang looks for one more member. Uraraka already joined Ida, Momo, Jiro, and Kendo. Kaminari already joined Kirishima, Bakugo, Mina, and Siro. Enter Mad Scientist. Hatsum wants to join because 1. Todoroki 2. Kid back from the dead that may need support where. Ghosts Gang plus Mad Scientist is a go. Teams. Yumomo, Uraraka, Ida, Jiro, Kendo. Bakugo, Kirishima, Kaminari, Mina, Siro. Midoriya, Todoroki, Hatsum, Tsu, Shinso. Rind, Pony, Yanagi, Shiozaki, Kuroro. Komori, Tokage, Shoji, Tokoyami. Shoda, Hananuki, Aways, Shishida, Ojiro. Stage 1 to 10-yard dash. Ida, 4RD. Bakugo, 2nd. Todoroki, 1st. Art Kuroro, 6th. Tokage, 5th. Shishida, 3rd. Stage 2 100-meter freestyle. Mina, 1st. Tsu, 2nd. Yanagi, 6th. Hananuki, 5th. Stage 3 rock wall, camp half-blood style. Kendo, 5th. Kirishima, 2nd. Shinso 1 ST, brainwashing. Ruin 6th. Testisu, 4th. Shoda, 5th. Why Uraraka, 3rd. Shiro 2nd. Izuku 1st. R. Shiozaki 6th. Tokoyami 4th. Sojiro 5th. Stage 5, Potato Sack Race. Y. Jiro 2nd. B. Kaminari 3rd. Hatsum 1st. Arway 6th. Titkamori 4th. Pony 5th. People moving on. Midoriya, Todoroki, Shinso, Tsu, Hatsum, Jiro, Ida, Uraraka, Momo, Kendo, Kaminari, Kirishima, Bakugo, Mina, Shiro, and Tokage. Izuku and Oboro have a chat comparing the two sports festivals. Hatsum finds the ghost gang after lunch and demands to sit with them. Hatsum wants to make stuff for Izuku and Shinso. They both agree. She asks them to come down to the lab after they get back from the break after the SF. Final ghost gang member unlocked. 1v1 battles. Midoriya vs. Jiro. Midoriya uses Black Whip to pick up Jiro and put her out of the arena. Jiro tries to blast him out with sound, but he starts to float. Midoriya ends up putting her out of bounds. Mina vs. Shiro. Shiro starts by wrapping her in tap. She melts the tape and pushes him into a corner. Todoroki vs. Tokage. Tokage starts to separate. Todoroki frees the whole area, thus incapacitating her. Shinso vs. Momo. Shinso tries brainwash. They resort to hand-to-hand combat. Momo is better at it since Aizawa. She pushes him out of the arena. Uraraka vs. Hatsum. Uraraka agrees to be a commercial for Hatsum and even helps show the products willingly, unlike Ida. Hatsum steps out afterwards. The crowd gives a standing ovation. Tsu vs. Kendo. Tsu goes invisible and sneak attacks Kendo. Kendo grabs her tongue. Tsu has poison on the tongue that paralyzes Kendo. Kendo is incapacitated. Kirishima vs. Kaminari. Kaminari and Kirishima use hand-to-hand without quirks. They thought it would be fun. Bakugo vs. Ida. Ida's engines stall out. Bakugo blasts him to Kingdom Come. Small break. Midoriya vs. Mina. Midoriya repeats the same process from Jiro. Mina tries to melt Black Whip, but it doesn't work. Todoroki vs. Momo. Todoroki tries to freeze the arena. Momo decided to take all the moisture out of the air. Todoroki resort to fire, overheating the device Momo was using. Momo tries to counter, but ends up failing. Hatsum, who is somehow in the 2A area, suggests that Momo use her quirk to create simple weapons. Kendo vs. Uraraka. Hand-to-hand fight. Halfway through the fight, Uraraka just randomly slaps Kendo, shocking her. Uraraka the floats her. Kendo is declared out of bounds. Kirishima vs. Bakugo. Repeat of last year, but Kirishima lasts longer. Todoroki vs. Midoriya. Midoriya tries to pick Todoroki up with BW. Todoroki freezes BW, and it works. Midoriya closes in on Tadu. Tadu has to rely on hand-to-hand. Tadu doesn't use fire punches cause he can't bring himself to do that to Midoriya. Tadadaku is an all-time high. Tadu is confronted with the fact he has a crush on Midoriya. Izuku is blind at love cause quirkless. Izuku ends up pushing Tadu out. Bakugo vs. Uraraka. Uraraka starts off strong. Bakugo is hella excited and rushes in. Uraraka and Bakugo trade a sheet ton of blows. Midoriya notes that her quirk probably isn't as straightforward as it seems. Bakugo wins, but Uraraka put up a good fight. Break to fix the stage. Izuku goes to talk with Uraraka. She is upset, but still determined to become even stronger. Izuku makes a comment on her quirk. Uraraka asks if they can put it to the test after the internships. Midoriya vs. Bakugo. Midoriya starts the fight off the same. Bakugo counters with his signature move. Midoriya dodges cause danger sense. Midoriya fills the arena with smoke. Bakugo is flying blind. Izuku pushes him into a corner. Bakugo tries to attack but again is fighting blind. He's kicked out of the arena. The arena clears of smoke. Midoriya is declared with winner. First Midoriya. Second Bakugo. Third Todoroki and Uraraka. 2 days off. Todoroki talks to Momo about feelings. Momo is a good mom friend, amazed face. Momo thinks Tadu has a crush on a girl. To-do doesn't correct her to remain anonymous about his crush. Ghost Gang, 2A girls and Eri hang out, paint nails, and watch movies. Eri has to go back and Izuku and To-do take her back. Mina overheard some of To-do and Momo's conversation and confronts her about it. Mina, spill the tea. Monoma, just not on Todoroki's face. Everyone, what? Ghost Gang already know who the crush is. Momo explains she doesn't know who, but To-do must be very deep into the crush to realize it on his own. Jiro suggests that it could be Shiro. Momo is taken aback for a sec and puts some things together. Momo thinks it's Kirishima since To-do describes the crush to be like a bright sunshine person. Shinso bluntly tells the room who it is. Harikure wonders why To-do would have a crush on a former corpse. Tsu explains the whole people seeing ghosts thing. To-do and Izuku get back and everyone quickly brushes off the topic. Back to school. Izuku picks his hero name, Addis. Info, https, listverse.com 2013-03-3010 Resurrected, religious figures. Monoma, Todoroki, and Midoriya got offers from the People Matter agency. Monoma highly recommends it. All three agree. Many just go back with who they had before. Momo decides to join Kirishima. We open with PM agency. Matter wants time with Todoroki. M decides to take Monoma to go over quickly analyze a quirk. Jumper wants to talk with Izuku. Jumper reveals the true nature of her quirk. Izuku isn't sure how to take in info that he is the determining factor for which side wins. M gets a hold of Izuku to explain simple concepts. Monoma is so confused. Fat gum agency stuff. Momo's parents SCK. FG wants to adopt her OFC. FG helps her with some body positivity. FG's group encounter LOV. Yay friendly bonding near-death experience. Momo after that calls and confesses to Jiro. Kirishima is shocked at her actually doing it. Bakugo is a very caring and worry-prone boyfriend. Momo is shocked by Kiribaku. Bovi check-in. Toga and Twice have been running around causing chaos. Kurogiri is a tired dad. Shigaraki is busy making plans. Spinner was injured by FG team. Dabi is out getting someone. Hawks is chilling waiting for his SBF to come back backhand index pointing right backhand index pointing left. Bakugo was at Mirko's agency. They spar. Later on patrol they run into Hawks. Hawks is upset Thai Spaghetti about his BF being at work. Bunny points out he's at work. Hawks leaves early to go see if his BF gets off early. Bakugo gets a call from his BF's mum. Mirio thinks it's cute and lets him go to the hospital. Dabi meets up with Natsuo. Natsuo has known about his brother for a while. Natsuo goes back with Dabi to help heal Spinner. Hawks jokes that Dabi is cheating. Natsuo is super grossed out by that. Natsuo and Dabi being siblings is revealed. Shigi decides the next course of action is to start taking over AFO's former empire. Kurogiri contacts the doctor so they can start. Back to school. People share experience with internships. Shinso was with Aizawa. Momo and Kirishima had a near-death experience. Aizu has a new buddy. To-do wants to learn more hand-to-hand. Monoma is so confused on Quirk Sheet. Jiro has a GF. Bakugo met Hawks. Tokoyami is upset on why his mentor bailed on him, sad face. Tsu and Uraraka had fun. Mina learned that hand-to-hand is harder than it seems. Izuku and Shinso go due to support. Hatsum demands to be called Mei. Mei wants to make Shinso voice changer, updated and improved capture scarf, and new costume. Mei wants to make Izuku shoes that roll, heat viz and night vision goggles, and so sort of weapon. She also has deemed them worthy of her AI. Mei joins them for lunch, amazed face. She has found her next victim. Monoma has been selected under after school quirk training. Uraraka and Izuku work together on her quirk. Uraraka can control how gravity affects a thing. Making the object heavier has the opposite effect on her. They practice this. Ghost Gang, minus the ghost, have an intervention about To-do and his crush. To-do does know how to express the crush and is worried. Tsu and Monoma will be his wingman. Shinso suggests To-do take Aizu to a cat cafe or aquarium. To-do chose aquarium. Aizu gets back from helping Uraraka. To-do chickens out under. Izu is suspicious of them. Class training. The importance of weapons. Momo, Izu, and Minoma choose a weapon. Izu, gun. Minoma, spear. Broccoli boy got a gun. Mei is super excited to design something. Submitting of forms, certifications, and new mentors. Izu and Snipe mentor-student. Minoma and Matter mentor-student. Momo and Upward mentor-student. Mei has designs for Izu and Minoma. Amazed face. Practicing with designs. Minoma, spear with electro top. Izu, stun, grapple, Mineta goop, and rubber bullets for gun. Momo is sticking to an OG bow staff. Upward is slightly disappointed by that. End term exams. Testing area is a city with AI robots to act as civilians. Each team has set goals. Villains have an objective and hero have to capture the villains. The villain's objective isn't known, but the heroes are given a list on what it could be. If the heroes capture the villains before they complete the objective, the villains fail and the heroes are excused from the end of the year finial. If the hero fail to capture the villains, the heroes fail and the villains are excused from the end of the year finial. If the heroes capture the villains and the villains completely the objective, they both pass. Villains get 12 hours to set up and we're informed of the test a week in advance for planning. Heroes are given 2 hours for information gathering. Mina and Uraraka pass. B. Ojiro and Kaminari pass. C. Minoma and Izu pass. D. Ida and Siro fail. Koda and Tsu fail. F. Bakugo and Momo pass. G. Todoroki and Shinso pass. H. Jiro and Kirishima pass. I. Shoji and Tokoyami pass. J. Hagakure and Sato fail. Villains. A, C, E, H, J. Heroes. B, D, F, G, I. A's objective, rob the bank and take the money to Snipe. C's objective, break 2 people out of prison, UA teacher who can't use quirks. E's objective, take 10 people hostage, AI robots by Hatsum. H's objective, destroy 3 buildings. J's objective, take out Tokoyami. A versus B. B was too busy scouting out buildings and checking on civilians to check the bank. A got away with the robbery and delivered it to Snipe. However, after that B was informed of the robbery. A and B had an all-out battle that resulted in B winning. C versus D. Minoma destroyed a whole block of buildings. D moved to the building to check on them, think it was the objective. Izu successfully broke out Midnight and Aizawa. They went on to take 20 people hostage, thus ending the test. Versus F. Momo located and determined the villain's objective. Bakugo got sent in first, apprehending both, only calling Momo in for backup towards the end. Clean win. G versus H. Jiro broke building while Kirishima kept Tadu and Shinso busy. Tadu eventually caught Kiri in an ice cube. Jiro was on her 4th when she was tricked by Shinso. I versus J. J took I head on. Hagakure was going to be the secret weapon, but Shoji took her out first. Eventually Sato was taken out. Failed. Sato, Hagakure, Ida, Siro, Koda, and Tsu. Passed. Tadu, Shinso, Jiro, Kirishima, Mina, Uraraka, Ojiro, and Kaminari. Passed plus Izu, Minoma, Momo, Bakugo, Tokoyami, and Shoji. 3-day left before training camp that lasts 2 weeks, then 2 weeks of break. Izu goes to Bakugo for advice on what a crush is. Bakugo is blind at love too. He is also slightly creeped that Izu knew about Kiribaku. Izu decides to make a call home. Inko gives great advice, .. Izu is gonna ask him out after camp. To the camp. WWBC finally meet the great 1A ghost. Koda and Eri meet. They get settled in. To work up the courage to ask. Izu is busy and he chickens out. Momo work on creating weapons and using them. Snipe help in all areas. More Uraraka quirk training. Mina and Izuku have a chat. Mina can create different type of acid. Do more research. Izuku practices combining multiple quirks. 2 truths and a lie is played in the boys' rooms. Eri tries to join in, but fails. Koda thinks it's funny cute. Aizawa drags Eri and Koda out of there. They keep playing. Things that are revealed. Izuku is a master at blackmail. Katsuki believed in Santa until he was 10. Izuku had a hand in that. Tadu wants to grow his hair out since he was 9. Shinso is really into drawing and art. Tokoyami writes ship fanfiction. Shoji reads cheesy romance novels. Kaminari's parents are pro-heroes. Shinso call Grape Boi every night at 3 a.m. with his voice changer telling him to repent for his actions. OG pretending to be Aizu. Koda knows all the animal drama. Ida had a crush on Fuyumi as a kid. Kirishima and Bakugo are dating. Izuku's mom is dating All Might. Ida makes them go to bed, sad face. Mei had some updates for Minoma and Izuku. Minoma now has DNA from his whole class on him at all times with his costume. Izuku has a new round, quirk suppressant. Super new and Hatsume's design. It nullifies both the quirk and any craving the quirk causes. It also only works on the quirk and has no known side effects. To do work on using both side at the same time while moving. Ida experiments with juice. Hand-to-hand combat training. Shinso, Shoji, Uraraka, and Ojiro help run the class. Izuku and Momo know more than they let on. Kirishima wants to set up a fight club. The whole class agrees to start doing something like that on Sundays before dinner. To do work up the courage to ask and fails. Sue and Minoma find the whole thing super sad so they try and help. To do isn't feeling confident. Eri, Koda, and Aizu hang out. Koda gets the story on Aizu. Eri thinks of Aizu as an older bro. Aizu is so touched by that. Koda thanks Aizu for helping with him. Aizawa reveals the getting of license plot. Last year's license exam turned into a bloodbath that the commission keep quiet. Aizu doesn't like the commission. Aizu provides some info. To-do isn't very social so he's not in ghost circles. License examiner is coming on the second to last day. Last day is a free day. People work on special moves. Izuku got a few that consist of combining quirks. Minoma is just the hair thing. Everyone else is canon. Shinso isn't sure. Girls invite Izu and Eri to play games. Uraraka flat out asks Aizu his opinion of To-do. Aizu gets all flustered. Eri drops the bombshell that Aizu wants to take To-do on a date. She overheard it and Kirishima explained the concept. Mina almost spills the beans. Aizu is suspicious of them. Eri wants to back to the game. Around 10 Aizawa goes to get Eri and tells Aizu to go back to the boys' room. Examiner shows up. It's Hawks. They have to spar each other. Hawks get to watch. They get to pick their partners. Todoroki versus Izuku. Bakugo versus Kirishima. Uraraka versus Ida. Hugh versus Minoma. Kaminari versus Siro. Momo versus Shoji. Mina versus Hagakure. Ujiro versus Sato. Jiro versus Shinso. Koda versus Tokoyami. Hawk POV with the notes on their performance. Hawk makes comments about Endeavor. Shoto is put on edge by it. Hawks notices. Next part. They have to find one of Hawk's feathers in the forest. There's 24 in the forest. You have to find one. All of them find them. Izuku first because a little girl pointed it out to him. The little girl follows Hawks around. Her name is Mariko. She was Hawk's team mate when they were younger in the HC. She disappeared one day after she failed to control her quirk. Hawks stays afterwards to watch the class. Eri decides to play with her for a bit. Hawks is confused. Izuku explains. Hawks is taken aback at the girl's name. Hawks asks about his time beyond. Izuku tries to describe it. Hawks asks Izuku's opinion on heroes. Izuku explains that sometimes heroes do more harm than good. Hawks reveals they all passed. Izuku is caught off guard but glad. Hawks likes Broccoli Ghost and wants to recruit him. You carrot. Izuku is so confused. Hawks decides to stay till tomorrow to further examine them. Izuku, Eri, Koda, and Mariko hang out for a bit. Koda is confused but gets used to the floating ball. Izuku asks if they can keep play while Izuku goes to do something. Eri asks bluntly if he's going to go, asks Todoroki out. Izuku is flustered. Koda thinks it's dumb, but To-do will probably agree. Mariko is confused on what the means. Eri explains. Izuku walks off. We swap to To-do. To-do is talking to Minoma, Tsu, and Momo about asking Aizu out. They give him advice. He's more confident Ovo. Back to Aizu's straight face. Aizu runs into Hawks. Hawks gives him a book? The book is coded with a date and time to talk with someone who wants to change the system. Aizu is thrown off guard. To-do shows up. He notices something if wrong with Aizu. Neither confessed he. To-do is frustrated about this. Izuku is still confused on the book. Back to UA. Izuku decodes the book. He isn't sure about what's going on. He asks around the GN. Mariko, who told another ghost who told Izuku, says Hawks is trying to recruit him to LOV in an attempt to strengthen the trust LOV has given him. Izuku decides to meet with Hawks. Dabi is there with another ghost, but is out of sight. Izuku is meant to think it's only Hawks. Hawks starts the meeting off doing a recruitment spill. Izuku ends up asking who Mariko is. Hawks freezes. Izuku explains the reasons for his SG. He also admits to knowing Dabi is there with a ghost named Hana who is complaining about his stupid hiding spot. Dabi comes out of the hiding spot. He asks if he can see them too. Izuku explains SG. Dabi thought he was crazy. Hawks is confused. Izuku agrees to have further meetings with them. That's as far as AI got. Anyway, love y'all night.